Joining us tonight at the Mashpee Select Board meeting, Monday, June 24th, 2024, in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. We are broadcast live on local cable channel 8, stream live on Mashpee website, www.mashpeema.gov/channel8. It is 6:30, and we will convene in an open session. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I'd like to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. I need approval of the following Monday, June 3rd, 2024, regular and executive session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And Monday, June 17th, 2024, regular session. Do I have approval?
So moved.
Go ahead. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you, and I'm a yes.
I
Appoint,
do abstain from the executive session,
okay,
for the record.
for the record, okay, thank you, David. Discussion of personal watercraft on Johns Pond and Mashpee Wakeby Pond. Town Manager Rodney Collins.
Yes, Madam Chair and board members. Recently, we have had some complaints brought to our attention relative to the operation of jet skis. I've requested the harbor master come before the board this evening in order to provide a briefing. But in short, I believe one of the things that we may want to try to address is whether or not we can take better control over the ramp that is currently a ramp for a great pond controlled by the state. If we were to get permission at this level and then seek permission from Sandwich and then go to the state, I think it's going to be a very long process. As far as the operation is concerned, assuming half of what has been said is true, I think the operation of the jet skis or watercrafts is unsafe, and it is a detriment and a menace to the public and to the people who reside on the Mashpee side of Mashpee Wakeby. I am not going to attempt to try to speak for the folks at Sandwich, but I certainly don't want to diminish their quality of life any more than my own residents. But at the same time, I think the harbor master can provide a clearer perspective, but unless the board objects, I would like to try to pursue at the state level some action relative to the control of the ramp. So with that,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening. Bobby Tomeno, I'm the harbor master for the town of Mashpee, and Rick Santangelo, the deputy harbor master for the town. I think the town manager said it perfectly. Our enforcement on the lake and the pond has been exponential this season. Is that better? Perfect. As I was saying, the enforcement this summer, I mean, the season really just started for us. It's been exponential on the lake. Sundays, I'm speaking on Mashpee Wakeby Lake at this time, not Johns Pond. Sundays seem to be our worst day up there for as regards to enforcement. We're extremely proactive. A lot of the times what ends up happening is, as the town manager stated, we do have a lot of jet skis that come from out of town. And it gets to the point where there's more of them than there are us. But at the same time, we're also, again, extremely proactive in stopping these jet skis. I myself threw 7 of them off the lake, I believe, last Sunday alone, and 4 citations were issued to 4 of those operators. So it's not like we aren't doing anything in reference to the issues. We're well aware of the issues at hand. We've been dealing with them for 2 years, but it has gotten to the point where it is not beyond our control, but there are a lot of people using the lake. As far as Johns Pond goes, it's not as bad as Mashpee Wakeby is. It definitely becomes a little bit more of an issue on Sundays. But again, we've expanded our swim zone at the Coast Guard beach there, more towards the herring run, to keep those jet skis out of the swim area there on the beach. And again, I know some people really want to just see a blanket enforcement type operation. I believe in education over just a blanket quote-unquote quota for the guys that work for me. We do a lot of education, and again, we're super proactive. So if we see a violation, the operator stopped, and it's up to the harbor master that's on duty at the time, which is usually either Rick or myself up on the lake on Sundays, whether to issue a citation or not. So again, if there's any other questions the board has, but I just want to make everyone aware that the proactivity is astronomical this year. I have multiple patrol logs here from all of the assistant harbor masters who patrol up there, and most of them are full. Did I miss anything, Rick?
No, it covers it.
What's an example of some of the citations?
Negligent operation, careless operation, speed. I can get you a more formal list, but no registration, no sticker. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry violations that we see. It's not like we're looking for violations. They come right to us. But again, I mean, we are out there for between certain hours. I'm not going to say them out to the public, but we're out there during those hours, and during that entire time, especially on Sundays, a beautiful Sunday, we're nonstop the entire time.
Is speed and egregious operation of the vehicle your primary kind of concerns?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, again, we're not similar to a police car where we sit on the side of the road and wait for things to come to us. We're constantly underway. So if we see a violation occur in front of us, that person stopped and the issue's dealt with. It's kind of difficult on the water to sit there, similar to a police officer does, and run a radar detail or something similar to that. But we do sit in certain areas, the problem areas, and if we see a violation occur in that area, then the violator stopped and is dealt with.
Are you getting a lot of pushback?
From the violators?
Yeah.
To be honest with you, no. A lot of them are, there is
They
a
are
length.
leaving once you tell them to leave?
Well, if it's a violation where under 90B, which is what harbor master law is under, if it comes to that level where I can tell them to leave the lake and I choose to do so, they do leave. We really haven't had any major issues this year in that regard.
No, and when we say leave, we mean the vessel is removed from the lake. We don't
Correct.
ban the people, just the vessel has to get off the water.
It's more or less the volume of,
People that are there?
You're 100% correct. It's the volume. Yep. But again, we keep up with it. I mean, there's never a Sunday where I'm calling for a second boat to have to go out to the lake. Our patrol boat suffices for what we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
And the volume is limited by the parking lot spaces. Once those are full, no one else is allowed to come in.
Well, don't they need a sticker to be in the parking lot?
They pay to come in,
They pay
and
to
once they're in, they could stay for the day. And once they're full, one out, one in. There's no coming to launch and then go parking at Town Hall or somewhere else. The lake is limited to those 45 spaces.
I believe it's 45.
45 spaces, that's it.
Are they parking here?
They have been, they're not supposed to be, but there are going to be some new signs that will clear that up.
Okay. Yeah.
So you've had up to 45 or more jet ski
I wouldn't say it
operators
was
at one
up-
time?
No, I mean, you have boat parking spaces as well there, so it's not just limited to jet skis. I say the most we had on the lake at one time, and this might be last year, I believe it was maybe 25 jet skis on the lake, if not more.
For example, this past Sunday, there was a bass tournament which took up 18 spaces right there, so it's certainly a mixture of boats and jet skis.
Can I ask you, is it the speed or is it the, I guess, driving of that?
It's both. It's both. I mean,
Is it both or is it one or the other? I mean,
so again, it's a lot different than when you're driving a motor vehicle on the water. Speed on the lake, it's considered negligent operation at the same, it can be considered negligent operation, but there's no set speed limit on the water either. But when you're throwing a wake, that's a violation. So it's not as cut and dry as driving a car.
and I don't know the answer to this, but is there a license requirement for even a young child or an age limit?
Yeah.
Right now, Massachusetts is one of the few states that doesn't require a boating safety course. And the environmental police have gone before the legislature, and they just can't get it passed. The only people required to take a boating safety course are if you're under 18 and wish to operate a jet ski or a powerboat. So they are required to take the safety course. But an adult, anybody over 18 can go buy whatever they want and do whatever they want with it.
John?
That,
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as limitations for the parking lot, is there a way to limit it to Mashpee residents? And of course, obviously, if it's
State.
Mashpee or Sandwich residents, is it because, and I know you're going to say because of the state, but can we get on the road to solving that problem?
that would be a question for the State Boating Access Board. I believe it's open to anyone, and that's the state, it's a state ramp, so it's their facility. We manage it, but it's their facility. So they can't, as far as I understand, it can't be limited to just Mashpee residents.
So I think we need to start with the state.
Well, I'd like to explore the possibility of assuming the maintenance of it. We are generally doing that anyway, but the state has accepted some of our billing for doing it in the past. I'd rather assume all maintenance, because they don't really do anything anyway. So let us do the work, but let us have a little bit better control. But I think it is a discussion at the state level that needs to be pursued, because clearly, if this type of behavior and conduct continues, more and more residents on our side, I don't know about the Sandwich residents, but more and more residents on our side will complain about their quality of life being impaired by the unsafe operation. If a couple folks were going out to canoe or to just take a relaxing evening on Mashpee Wakeby, they could be in danger right now.
Right. That's sad.
And just one more quick thing so everyone understands. Again, Sundays seem to be the worst day of the week for us. Today, it's a beautiful night on the lake. I was just down at the boat ramp running some registrations. It's a gorgeous night out there. There isn't a single jet ski that I saw from the boat ramp on the lake. So fortunately, in some fortunate way, Sundays do seem to be the worst day, and I'll echo what the town manager said. I completely understand. If I was a resident of Mashpee Wakeby Lake, I would love to be able to go sit on my dock on a Sunday afternoon and enjoy myself. I completely get that. But I just hope the residents understand that we are extremely proactive, and we're not just sitting on the side of the lake enjoying our lunch. We're nonstop on Sunday afternoons through Sunday night sometimes till 9 o'clock at night dealing
Now,
with the jet skiers.
Does Sandwich patrol their side?
I can't comment on the town of Sandwich. I have never seen a patrol boat out there, but I'm not going to speak on behalf of their harbor master or their DNR.
Okay.
They have just a sliver of the lake.
It's a very small sliver, but
And
there
I've
is a piece of it in
Been
Sandwich.
up there doing this for 10 years, and I've never seen them there. For all practical purposes, we're the only ones on the lake doing
Because
enforcement.
they're parking their cars somewhere in Sandwich to get,
There is some places to park over in Sandwich that are, I don't know if they're private property or not, but they do access the beach from there. I don't know of any boat ramps in the town of Sandwich for Mashpee Wakeby Lake.
any other questions?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Mr. Collins, do you need a motion from us, or would that assist you in given you the permission to move forward with any consideration with the state?
I think it would always be helpful to have board support, because when I'm speaking with either the environmental police or whoever it may be, it would be nice to have the support of the board. Obviously, there's a distinct difference between operational activities versus policy issues, but I think this really gets to the policy level where I need some guidance in terms of what the board wants for the purposes of going forward. I think, again, the issue has got to focus on the ramp and empowering me to have a discussion with the state relative to the ramp. If the board doesn't want me to do that,
Oh, no, I think,
I'm just saying, hypothetically, if the board didn't want me to do that, obviously I'm not going to, but I think the complaints are going to continue. Yeah.
Can we invite, as the board, ask for a representative or authority from the state to come down and answer questions and start there?
We can do whatever you would like.
I mean, I'd like for them to come down and talk and have a conversation with our harbor master officials, ourselves, yourself, and find out what the options are and have them here so we can ask questions in a
Okay.
dynamic way.
So I think that's a clear,
I think that's
Objective.
reasonable. I like that idea.
so,
you want to make
Did
that
you-
motion, David?
Motion, so move.
Second.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
all right, so
With idea to
we'll start
The
there.
ball rolling.
We'll have a discussion at the operational level. We'll get the state involved, and we will report back and see if we can get them in here for the purposes of further discussion.
Is that something we should ask our local representatives to attend that meeting?
I can do that, too. I don't need a motion for that. That's just a simple call. Yep.
And by bringing the state in, that starts the discussion about us taking over the boat ramp.
That's,
I mean, that's,
that's,
Goal is.
Okay.
That's the goal.
that is an option.
okay.
Okay.
I guess having them prepared to answer those questions specifically is kind of, because that's the route. I think the consensus is that we want to go in, so we want to be able to frame that and get that done in an expedited way. So if they're prepared to answer those kind of questions would be helpful.
Yes, sir.
And then maybe get Sandwich involved somehow. Maybe with a letter from us saying that our concerns about them coming on that side of the lake.
Yeah. I'd like to know what the concerns are, you know, everyone's concerns, but I agree, but let's have that conversation before we pull the plug on everything. I think I don't know enough about it to just say no more jet skis, but,
I'll also reach out to the town manager in Sandwich, who I know very well, and we'll see what the complaints are over there, if any, and try to find out a little bit more background from the Sandwich side, which I am not familiar with.
Very small sliver, Chief.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Your time.
Have a good night.
Yes, you also.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Department of Public Works Director, Catherine Laurent. Hi, Catherine.
Evening. So the first item on your agenda is approval of an order of taking for easements. This is related to the road conversion for Old Ham Circle that was approved a few town meetings ago. As you may recall,
Excuse me. Please.
this neighborhood has some old wooden retaining walls that need to be rebuilt. The walls, as originally constructed, were not within the existing road layout, so we are in need of taking easements, not only for construction of the new stone retaining walls, but also for future maintenance of them. I have met with the 3 property owners that are impacted, and they all have signed a waiver of damages, so they are in agreement with the town moving forward with taking the easement.
So everybody's on board?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the order of taking of easements for Old Ham Circle?
So moved.
Second.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. The award for contract?
Thank you. The next item is award of a contract for replacement of the boat ramp at the Edward A. Baker Boat Ramp at Pirates Cove. This is a project that will be undertaken after Labor Day. So we'll work with the contractor on that schedule so that notice can be provided to boaters. So it includes a replacement of the concrete ramp itself, as well as the addition of another float that will hopefully help with some of the congestion that we have with boats launching and being pulled out.
Because that's a busy spot.
It is a very busy spot.
Very good. Do I have a motion?
Motion to award contract to CJR Atlantic, Inc. of Marston Mills in the amount of $464,800.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion?
Ms. Laurent, I recognize they're the lowest bid, but looking at the variations in some of the baseline bids, I mean, they're leaving a significant amount of money on the table. That is a red flag for me. Just, I mean, going with the lowest bidder is it a reasonable bid when comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges?
Sure.
Are they leaving, I mean, they're leaving a lot of money, almost $900,000 on the table from the highest bid.
Have you used them before?
So the town of Mashpee has not utilized them before. They did provide references, which I did, with that same concern, reach out to all of the references. Their references were great. They have not performed a boat ramp replacement specifically, but they have done other projects on the water where cofferdams, et cetera, were required. I did review this with our engineer, and they felt that the number was adequate for the work that was expected. As you mentioned, it doesn't leave a lot of profit on the table. My thought is they're trying to expand their business, and so this is a good opportunity for them to get a project, under their belt, be successful in its completion, and hopefully that puts them in a good position for other projects on the Cape.
And also, it's at the end of the season, too.
Right. This number is when we replaced the ramp at Aquay a few years ago. This number is actually more than what we paid for that project, not including the float. So even just the ramp replacement, this is more than what that project was.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. We will work with our engineer. There are specific submittal and inspection requirements. We'll obviously stay on top of those just to make sure that we don't have any issues during construction.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. So we
Yes.
have a motion. Okay, David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, 6:35, public hearing, South Cape Beach Estates public road conversion.
Pursuant to Town of Mashpee General Bylaw, Section 156D, the Select Board will conduct a public hearing on Monday, June 24th, 2024, at 6:35 p.m. to address the private and public road conversion of Chickadee Road, Debbie Lane, Manitoba Road, Metacomet Road, Nahoyden Road, Neshobe Road, Pontiac Road, Samoset Road, and Wemesset Road, Whippoorwill Circle, and Wills Work Road, as shown on the plans entitled Pontiac Road, Metacomet Road, Samoset Road, Manitoba Road, Neshobe Road, Nahoyden Road, Wemesset Road in Mashpee, Mass., dated May 31, 2023, and prepared by Cape and Islands Engineering. Said hearing will take place in the Wacoit Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. 02649. Copies of the plans may be viewed in the office of the Town Planner and Select Board at Mashpee Town Hall. Broadcast live on local cable Channel 8, streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website, https://www.mashpeema.gov/channel8. You can submit comments and questions via email to bos@mashpeema.gov prior to the meeting date and time.
Thank you, Michaela. Okay. Here we go. Yes.
Could you possibly turn up the volume on the microphones, please?
Or use the microphone, please.
Okay. So this is,
Would you like me to read it again?
no. Would you like her to read it again? No. Okay. Okay, so now we have a true price to do these roads, right, Catherine? Now, where do we go from here? Now we have to get the petition signed by all the residents.
So as you may recall, this project was postponed at town meeting to allow us time to redo the construction estimate based on what stormwater improvements would be required because of the roads being located within the floodplain. So this is the public hearing that's required by the bylaw for residents who have been notified of what that cost would be, what their betterment costs would be, and give them an opportunity to ask questions, and as mentioned, potentially gather the required signatures to submit for a subsequent town meeting.
Okay, does any of the residents have any questions?
I do.
You do? Okay.
Now, how do we vote on this? Because a lot of people in my neighborhood come up to me. Yesterday, I got a registered letter telling me about this. And a lot of people said, how do we vote on this? I don't understand this. They don't understand it, but, so when somebody votes on it, it has to be registered?
You have to sign a petition.
Right, but it has to be a registered so they can make sure those people live there, or? Because a couple of people in my neighborhood sold their houses and they moved out.
Okay.
One of them was the petitioner. So I want to make sure that they're not taking the old votes and just turning them over and not really, because a lot of people, when they saw it's $1 million more than the first time, and a lot of people, 6 of them, Sunday, come to me and said, I don't understand this. This is going to cost us that much more with 5.5% interest. I don't want this. But they were asking me, how do they vote? So does it have to, when I vote, it has to be registered at the town hall that I'm actually a person who owns that property. Oh, Catherine, I'm sorry.
So any resident property owner of South Cape Estates, if they are interested in the project moving forward, would sign the petition that would be provided by the town manager's
All right,
office. Once, if greater than 50% of the property owners sign that petition, that would be submitted to the town clerk's office, and the signatures would be certified that they are, in fact, current property owners in that neighborhood.
And then at town meeting,
And then.
That's the time we've really actually vote on
Correct.
taking the roads over.
If the signatures were certified that there were more than 50% of the property owners, then the petition would be submitted for the warrant of the next town meeting,
It's July 11th, right?
for the October town meeting, correct. And then ultimately, all of the taxpayers, our property owners in town would vote at that town meeting.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Over here? Please come up to the mic.
Were we supposed to sign to speak, though?
No, this is a public hearing.
Actually, I have a few questions.
That's okay. Catherine's right here.
I'm sorry. My name is Jack Hashie. I live at 6 Whippoorwill Circle. I live on the corner of Willsworth Road and Whippoorwill.
Just bring it close to you.
Yeah, bring it close
That's
to
all.
Jack,
Just bring
that's
it close.
Hello? Anyways, again, Jack Hashie, 6 Whippoorwill Circle, Mashpee, Mass., as you know. My first question is, who owns Willsworth Road?
The deeded property owners.
All right, is there any evidence of that in the records at the town?
Catherine?
That's a $64,000 question.
It is a good one, too.
Don't mind, I'm gonna move up here. Our research has shown that the Willsworth Road, that section where Great Oak Road ends and it continues, that is actually owned by the state, the Commonwealth.
Okay, so has an easement been put into place?
The plans do not include improvement to Willsworth Road.
They do not.
They do not.
Okay, so why is it included on the cost of the overhaul?
It's not.
It says Willsworth Road on the list.
That is a typo. It is not included.
Oh, it's a typo, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that should have been noted. All right, so if that's, the other question I have is about, thank you for answering that. Although I do like to see evidence that the state owns the property. If the state owns the property, would we have the authority to get an easement off them? I know the town can't answer that question, correct? It's a state-owned property, okay. So there's a lot of flooding on that road. That's actually probably the worst section of, if anyone's familiar with the neighborhood, that road is where the flooding happens at
Right.
the highest point in the worst. And it used to happen when, I've been a resident now for 29 years. It used to happen twice a year. Now it happens once a month, if not more. Anytime we have a heavy storm, it floods. And that's why I was worried about the remediation that would be involved. So the other question I have is, how would they calculate the cost of the betterment? Does it go by square footage of the homeowners, or is it just they take the total and divide it by the number of homeowners? Does it go by just like a typical property tax bill?
It's by the total number of properties in the neighborhood.
So someone has a 50,000 square foot lot, which no one does, but someone has a 12,000 square foot lot, pays the same amount as someone has a 4,000 square foot lot?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not proportional to the amount of frontage on the road?
No.
That seems very unfair. Okay. All right, so what rights, if any, are we forfeiting on the private lots that we own, if any? We have private lots that the homeowners association owns, which I understood that could at some point be sold in order to do the work that we're now pursuing, asking the town to do. We have these private lots contained within the homeowners association that the homeowners association presumably owns and has the right or title to and could sell. Is that still true?
I can't speak to what current rights the association has to sell those properties, but part of the plan for stormwater improvements would be to utilize some of those association properties for stormwater improvements.
So there's no compensation for that in any way?
No,
Okay.
again, this is a petition by the property owners for the
understand.
town to accept the roads.
Fair enough. All right, so, I mean, I think those are the questions I have. I mean, I guess they got answered, and I just wanted to put them out there. It was my understanding that the Willsworth Road, no one claimed to own it. The state of Massachusetts does not claim they own that road, by the way. If you go to you go down to the place where I got married there, the reserve, the wood reserve, and talk to they claim they don't own the road, that the town's responsible for the road. There's been debate. I've been there 27 years, and no one, I actually went to see Tom Fadula here a long time ago, and he told me that the road does not belong to the state, And he thought it belonged to the town, actually, but he couldn't prove that to me at the time. So there's a lot of debate as to where that, what, I'm not talking about, just so you know, I'm not talking about Will's Work Road in its entirety. I'm talking about the paved section that starts, like you said, from Great Oak Road, and all the way goes along the side of my house, up to the gate, which goes back about 150 feet. That section, from what I understand, does not belong to anyone. It's a no man's land. At least no one claims to own it, and no one can prove they own it. So that's what's got me thinking, what's going on here, and who owes, and for that matter, why for 30 years have we been paying to maintain that road if the state has owned it this whole entire time? And I put in numerous complaints to the state in the town. The state has said to me, we're not responsible for the road, the town is. So there's a lot of debate there, and I've not got a satisfactory answer since I've been here 29 years. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Anyone else? Okay, board members, any discussion? Any questions?
A question. A few months ago, we all watched a video that was taken by property owners in that association, and it showed the severe flooding and the flooding going into the bay. And a question I have is, will this new plan mitigate that flooding?
We would be addressing as part of the roads becoming town road, yes, any stormwater runoff from the roads. I don't know if there might be other contributing sources of that water, but any runoff from the roads themselves would be addressed, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
With that, with the betterments within the Wills Work Road, if the state does own it, is there state funding that can be accessed to offset some of the overall cost?
The estimate is based only on the roads that are within the neighborhood. The estimate does not include any improvement to Willswork, that section of Willswork Road. As mentioned, that has been an ongoing discussion between the town and the state and the neighborhood in terms of who owns that portion of the road. It's our opinion that it is owned by the Commonwealth.
Can I ask the town to officially declare, make it up a motion to make sure that we find out who? Is that important?
Or can we have a road taking? Can we take the road?
Right, you have no right to take the road.
It's crazy.
Not to be able to do the work without that road being part of the project.
Mr. Collins?
Director, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the state has come down with their grader in the past for that road.
Yeah.
Correct, for the dirt portion of the road, correct.
That's what I'm talking about. And I believe state officials have been down there. I can't recall who I met with because it was a number of years ago, but I believe one of them was a cabinet-level secretary that was down there. And my impression was it was definitely state-owned.
Okay. Anything else? I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Now, do we need to vote? No. Okay. So we're all set. Now we need to convene the joint meeting with the planning board.
No, there's one more.
Oh, is there? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion and approval of the new Cat Dog LLC host community agreement. Robert Catania, CEO of Cat Dog LLC. I'm sorry. Thank you,
Hi,
David.
good evening, everybody.
I know we have new state rules, so. Is there anything, Wayne?
They're coming in requesting we just reauthorize the host agreement to Catalog because of when they placed the application in, they had placed it in anticipating the new changes in the rules that hadn't happened yet, is how I understood it. And that you're going to, all we're doing is really just reissuing
The license.
yeah, under the new regs, correct?
Yes, that's pretty much correct, yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
One question that I have is, on the model agreement, it talks, and I think on your letter, it states that, there's option of host agreement submitted by a licensed applicant, marijuana establishment, or medical marijuana treatment center, are kind of the two different types of medical marijuana facilities, and...
We're not medical, we're recreational.
All right. Because that had me a little confused.
Yeah,
because
we're
there's
just a
two
recreational license approved by the state.
Okay,
We didn't apply for medical.
so the medical treatment
Yeah.
doesn't apply?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just want to clarify, so all else remains the same?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second,
All in favor? John?
yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And myself, yes. You're all set.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Good luck with that.
Okay, now we'll convene our joint meeting with the planning board. Discussion and possible approval of the housing production plan. Town planner, Evan Lanier.
Can you just let
Let them
the
open.
planning board open up?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, recognizing quorum, the chair of the Mashpee Planning Board convenes on this Monday, June 24th, 2022, at 7 o'clock, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast live, and good evening, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. You want to start?
Indeed. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Select Board, Planning Board. It's with great pleasure we present to you a final draft of the housing production plan this evening. Last we presented this to you, I believe was, back in December or January, was some time ago. And we had a number of comments received both from both Planning Board and Select Boards. The Planning Board has specifically taken up this document subsequently to our presentation with you back in the winter. Mostly deep diving on some of the zoning strategies that were originally contemplated in the plan. Much of the discussion has centralized around the discussion or narrative within the document pertaining to our current pollution challenges and water quality challenges, and reconciling what many would perceive as conflicting statute or obligations to ensure we meet our TMDLs for nitrogen removal from both McCoy and Papaneset Bays, but also to provide 10% of our existing housing stock as SHI eligible affordable units. Much of the discussion further centralized around the strategies about providing that affordable housing on the SHI, but also goals in the document that pertain to production of units that exceed the income thresholds of 80% of the AMI as enumerated in the needs assessment of the plan. So since our presentation with you, we've been back to the Affordable Housing Committee on a number of occasions. We held a public comment period of which the committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, received and responded to a number of comments. I do want to highlight for you that I know we had provided two drafts of this document that are identical, but I need to enumerate to you the nuances between them. When we had met last, many of you had asked for a redlined copy of the document so that you could see how changes were made and public comments were incorporated. So on the website for the housing production plan, we've provided a clean copy of the plan, which includes much of the document you had evaluated in the winter, but includes also an introductory letter submitted by the Affordable Housing Committee, or by the chairman of the Affordable Housing Committee on their behalf, the appendices, as well as how we had responded to comments received by the Affordable Housing Committee. I'm proud of the document that we're presenting to you this evening. I do believe it articulates quite well the challenges we face with regard to providing an adequate and diversified housing stock to accommodate a sustainable local economy moving ahead, while being cognizant and deliberate in its discussion on the wastewater challenges we're also confronted with. I know that many of you retained some of your questions and concerns around those two topics, so we'd be more than happy to field your questions relative to everything we have sought to improve in the document since fielding your initial comments, and certainly respond to provide additional clarity relative to any concerns you may have in the document. But the Affordable Housing Committee, my office, our consultants from Barrett Planning Group have been working diligently on this since, I believe it was since August or so, where we began this process in consultation with local stakeholders, with policymakers, with the DNR director, with the wastewater superintendent, with the health agent, and other town staff, state agencies, et cetera. So I'm very proud to present it to you and eager to field your questions.
Okay. Mary, you want to start with any questions?
I don't have any questions. I have comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Mary Wagan. I'm the chair of the planning board. Welcome, everybody. I've been involved in this process since the start. I have engaged in the public process on this plan. As many of you know, that I do housing professionally. I do affordable housing professionally. And there's been a considerable amount of effort in this plan. This plan has met the minimum requirements of the state for a housing production plan, and housing production plans are regulated by the state. And they're not required by towns, but there are some important benefits from them, in that one of them is that if you create a certain number of affordable units within a 12-month period, you can get a free pass or a safe harbor from aggressive Chapter 40B. So that's the incentive from the state to do this. And plus, planning is a great thing to do. I've been to a lot of meetings. I've been to extra meetings of the Affordable Housing Committee. I've really kind of hunkered down on this. I did submit comments on the plan during the public comment period. Unfortunately, my comments, even though I'm a voting member on this plan, those comments didn't make it into the plan. There were excellent public comments, written public comments. You know, they're in the appendix. They're in the appendix. They're looking for them right now, and they're responded to, but they didn't get into the text of the plan. They didn't modify the plan. There were other people, I can see them here in the room tonight, hopefully they get a chance to speak on that as well. Their comments, these are movers and shakers in this town, experts, especially in clean water, and their comments weren't put in the plan. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned that we have two major needs in the town, and we haven't reconciled the conflicts between them. One of my comments is that this plan be for affordable housing, and that's capital A affordable housing, that serves low and moderate income households and that get on our 10% inventory. That's the reason that the state wants us to do the plan. That's the main focus. That's the regulation that they're asking for, is for us to get to our 10% of affordable housing. That looks like about 180 units. You know, I think that's a reasonable number to go for in a 5-year plan. Why? Because we're in a crisis with our water quality. And we're just starting to ask people for funding. We've committed to them to taking out a huge amount of our nitrogen load in this town. That nitrogen load, let's just say it out loud, has been caused by housing, right? It's all of our flushes, and we're all willing to take a part of that. I mean, I'm willing to contribute to that and to support that. What I'm not willing to do is to have a plan that builds out the town with too much housing. The plan really needs to incorporate the clean water plan that the townspeople have adopted. Any type of housing benefit, and I'm talking about market rate housing, this is not necessarily housing that serves low, moderate income households. Any of that market rate housing, any of that development has to have an affordable housing component of at least 10% so that we don't fall behind. It also has to have a clean water component. One of the suggestions that hasn't made it into the body of the plan is to convert our existing housing into affordable housing. That's an excellent idea. I just went to the Cape Coastal Conference by Webner. They had a scenario where an affordable housing development got money from Mass Development for a wastewater treatment plant, and they connected the neighboring neighborhoods to it. You know, they connected like this, so it ended up being a clean water plan, a clean water project more than an affordable housing project. So. This is, I know that I have been to all these meetings, I've seen how hard everybody's worked, but I just don't think we have consensus on this yet. And thank you for starting with me, Madam Chair.
You're welcome there. Dennis?
Okay,
Go ahead.
but I don't understand, we want affordable housing, but every time we want affordable housing, we put a roadblock up.
We always do.
You know, we need affordable housing, we need soaring. We can't have affordable housing unless we have soaring. And the neutral flow bylaw, that kind of puts a damper on getting houses. And 40B, though we get 10%, they put up 90% new houses, so that number never changes with the 40B. It always stays because they put that many houses that take that 10%.
Away.
So we're never gonna reach the 10% with 40Bs, but we gotta start putting roadblocks in front of it's either we want affordable housing, or what I like to think, maybe we should have put a moratorium till we got the sewers done and see how they're working. Then we can take care of the affordable housing and stuff, because everything will be sewered then. And we won't have to worry about the wastewater going into our rivers or embankments. But that's my 2 cents in this thing. I just can't see all these roadblocks. Every time we say one thing, and then there's people fighting against, they don't want it in their neighborhood, and then they're at a meeting. We need affordable housing. It's like catch-22.
Evan, did you want to address anything that Mary and Dennis
And I think this
said
plan was
so far?
well done. And thank you, Evans, and everybody else that participated in this.
Sure, Madam Chair. I guess the points I'd like to highlight or isolate are really pertaining to strategies around redevelopment of existing properties, conversion. I don't believe, it is my professional opinion, that no strategy in this plan contemplates or suggests or otherwise incentivizes the build out of the town. The plan really prioritizes and focuses on redevelopment as the priority, including strategies such as overlay districts to redevelop existing commercial areas into mixed-use residential neighborhoods, as well as allowing single-family conversions by special permit. And while I recognize that not all comments received made its way into text changes into the plan, those were policy decisions made by the Affordable Housing Committee after they deliberated on the comments received. And so not all of Mary's comments made it into the plan, but numerous of them were. So I want to make that clear.
John?
Listen, there's a lot of words in this plan. I mean, there's a lot to this plan. I don't know what's missing, what has to come out, but all I heard was you made comments, and some of the stuff is not in there. I mean, I'm looking at it as if there was a problem with this plan, what is it? What would it take to change? And let's correct it or add it and make it so. At the same time, I'm with you on Dennis. I'm not with you on the moratorium.
No, just throwing that.
I think you overspoke on that one, because that would mean stop building everything for the next 100 years. So it'll be long. I'll be long gone before that happens. But as far as I agree with you when you're talking about these roadblocks. We're either for affordable housing or we're not.
But I'm not talking just about affordable housing. I'm saying the 180 of affordable units is fine. I'm talking about the 2,500 market rate units that's in the introductory letter. It's like that was identified as what we need to fix our housing market. And the tools to protect our water and make sure any additional market rate units are used year-round are not in this plan yet. They could be. I agree with you. We could work to improve this plan. But the market rate, the stuff that's in here that would allow market rate units, it's too much. It doesn't have enough protection of our clean water program, and it doesn't even make sure that they're year-round units.
All right, so listen, and I'm not going to argue with you that if you say so, that's fine. What I'm saying is, there is a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah.
And I truly believe if we sat around this meeting for hours upon hours, month after month, year after year, we could never come to a complete census and put everything in there. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of work that went into all this. This is a lot of effort. I think it's well done. Could there be some flaws in here? Yes, but I also, from my understanding, this isn't a so-called Bible. This is a guide, and maybe I'm wrong, and if Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a guide for us to follow for housing, correct?
Well, of course, conditions always change, but, your goal should be upon adoption of this plan to implement the plan and to evaluate necessary changes as conditions change. So yes, it's a guide. But however, if you adopt a plan, you want to implement the plan.
Totally get it.
And only make those changes when conditions necessitate.
But it is a guide.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
It's not an absolute.
All of our planning work is living work. They're living documents. That's why we update them regularly.
So, and again, if say we were to adopt this, and a few months down the road, could it be amended and added? And additional verbiage be adopted?
You won't see it for another 5 years.
Yeah, this is our 5-year plan. We would attack this again in 5 more years.
Okay.
One point I'd like to make, if I may, Madam Chair, I think the 2,500 market rate units is probably referencing and I know the chairman of the Affordable Housing Committee is here. The committee and myself, at least as I understand it, has identified that the growing affordability gap that is impacting households that earn above 80% of the AMI. In many respects, it's the most needy income households in our community. So the committee and my office felt compelled to provide strategies that address the largest growing gap within our community. And so I believe Mr. Isbitz conducted an analysis some years ago that identified the actual shortfall of units that exists within the town based on the median household income and the median sales price of homes in the town. So the 2,500 units that I think Mary was referencing is a reference to that analysis, but none of the strategies in the plan are specific to trying to generate 2,500 units within the 5 years this plan will exist before you need to update it again.
Can I comment?
Please.
I believe that what it's referring to is the number of households who are cost burdened, meaning unaffordably housed.
Thank you.
So, yeah. And then, if I may make a comment about the strategies, I think, the Affordable Housing Committee, when I met with, I can't even remember when we met to go over the comments. I believe it was March, but to go over the comments, I mean, they took an incredibly thoughtful approach to responding. So I encourage you, if you haven't read the response document to the comments, to take a look at that. But with regard to strategies relating to wastewater, the plan states, right at the outset of the strategies that you already have a flow neutral bylaw that has to be adhered to regardless of any zoning changes. And so this does not negate that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So the plan does state that.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Sure. You have a flow neutral bylaw that...
That's the reason why I want you to say it again.
Okay. So that exists. The flow neutral bylaw allows for waivers to be granted by the sewer commission if it is eventually on sewer, and by the Board of Health if it's septic. But that effectively limits the number of bedrooms that you can have per acre, regardless of what the zoning says. So the intent of some of the zoning strategies is to allow more flexibility within that bedroom count that you're allowed. So for example, if you have an acre, And, you have the option of putting either a single-family home or, 3 townhouses. Well, actually, I suppose you'd have to, let's go with 2 acres to make the math work here. You're either limited to that, what's currently in the zoning, so say a single-family home, or potentially doing, townhouses, again, confined to that number of bedrooms regardless, but you've created more flexibility in unit type. So I think that was some of, there's no attempt to dismiss the flow neutral bylaw in this plan. The other thing, the committee received a lot of excellent comments about, concerns about with the updated Title V regulations and how the whole reason why the town is submitting the watershed permit requests to give some kind of reprieve, additional time to comply with that. And so we added, I think, I'm a little sad to hear that, people don't, Mary, if you don't think your comments have been addressed, because we added quite a bit of language to the document explaining these, explaining what the Title V regulations say, explaining what the town has to do to comply, explaining what steps the town is taking. There's no strategy relating to it. There had been a strategy to begin broadening conversations regarding land use planning and wastewater planning. And I believe it was at the January Select Board meeting. I can't recall if it was a joint meeting. I was not at it.
It was.
Where it was requested that that strategy come out. And that was just a strategy about talking about it. So that was the only strategy relating to wastewater in the plan. There's no other strategy that relates to it.
Yeah, so all the strategies that contemplate what you might consider higher density uses are going to be bound by flow neutral if they're not a 40B project. So if you have, 50,000 square feet, you get 5 bedrooms. Whether that's one single family house with 5 bedrooms or one apartment building with 5 bedrooms, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about constructing anything that goes outside the confines of flow neutral. I do think it's an important discussion to have as your wastewater planning efforts progress. But this plan, I will say it again, does not include strategies that suggest waivers or that do not include strategies that incentivize increasing the densities that go beyond the limitations of flow neutral. And one thing I had thought about considering that conversions and redevelopment is a priority. Something like 90% of town of Mashpee building lots that are already improved with single-family dwellings are less than 40,000 square feet, which means they get the 4 bedrooms by right. But if you were to convert, for example, a single-family dwelling to a multifamily unit that was less than 10,000 square feet, multifamily units only get 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet. So I see that as an inherent conflict, something that needs further discussion. And so these again, the strategies that are for zoning are intended to diversify the housing stock within the confines of flow neutral. And I would remind everyone that this process started back in August. With interviews with stakeholders, with discussions with the community, with a survey, and on the heels of the local comprehensive plan community engagement work, where redevelopment was a priority and diversification of the housing stock was a priority. This is what this plan seeks to accomplish without compromising your wastewater goals.
David?
Some of my concerns are that, as
Excuse me, Vice Chair, I've been asked by the control room, could you talk a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
Yes, John had said, it's a large document, there's a lot of words. For me, looking at it, the last 14 pages kind of dive into the strategies, and then, the rest is kind of just substantiating and providing a lot of data, good data. I mean, I don't want to take away from the work done on this. There's a lot of good information in here. But the strategies, there's 14 pages of strategies on an 83-page document. One of the issues that I have is, like, in the executive summary, which is another 8 pages or so, you know, we're starting off with the plan strategy. Your first one is make good use of the Chapter 40B as a vehicle creating affordable housing, and 1A, collaborating with the Mashpee Commons to plan continued implementation of Phase 1. I don't like naming one particular development as in our housing strategy plan, especially as number one on our list for addressing issues that are much larger than market rate housing that they're doing. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of affordable housing in there. I think they're still shy on the last committal to meeting 40B. So that kind of really puts me off seeing that as front and center on number one. You know, and then there's another area, I forget exactly where it states that, you know, we're going to work towards meeting the 10% minimum. That's a minimum. It's not, you know, to address the housing crisis, we need to meet or exceed. We don't need to work at meeting a minimum requirement that's de minimis in addressing the larger problem. I have a tribal member that came to me today explaining how she's going to be moving into a tent within the next 2 days because she can't find anything, and she's 73 years old, tribal elder. You know, that kind of stuff really breaks my heart to hear that, you know, there's no place to live and she's willing to pay. She's on a limited income, but, you know, she's destitute and actually considering moving into a tent at 73 years old, who's grown up here and lived here her whole life. You know, that kind of stuff. How are we addressing those issues? There has to be equitable housing. If we're going to build and continue building, then it has to be equitable. There has to be measurable goals. There, you know, no one side should continuing building at our current rates or previous rates unless it's equitable housing for all and addressing all the marks, you know, as we go forward. We have catching up to do on the affordable side. Market rate has thrived, you know, especially right now with the prime market rate where it's at now. And, you know, we're building predominantly market rate. It's not proportionate is my issue, and it needs to be proportionate. So how are we addressing that? The final thing that I had was that, you know, my understanding was that it's a lot of words. I thought we were going to come back, reconvene, and there was going to be a matrix that showed how concerns were factored in, even if they were consolidated and synthesized so that you kind of had key takeaways, and do that at a future meeting. This is from the last meeting, I believe you said it was January. Like, you know, coming forward and meeting again, reconvening, not coming together to kind of vote. And I don't know that this is ready to move forward and make a decision on. I feel like this meeting is that meeting to kind of come together and look at the synthesized comments and see how they were incorporated and have that as a discussion in and of itself.
Sure. David, I don't disagree with, I think, anything you said. I think with regard to the strategy one and the specific reference to Mashpee Commons, that's certainly language that could be massaged. That seems very attainable. But I think throughout the data presented in the plan, the needs assessment, that is the bulk of the plan. I mean, the issues you just articulated relative to the tribal elder are, they're shouting at us from the data. And it's not just our seniors, it is all income levels and all family types. And so we have produced, I'd say solely with very limited exception, ownership market rate. We've produced almost no rental units at market rate, and we've done a relatively poor job at producing restricted units at or below 80% of the AMI. So this document, the strategies are intended to focus on meeting the market rate need, which is rental units of a diversified housing typology, so pretty much everything else but the single-family dwelling, prioritizing conversion, but also the undercurrent of ensuring that housing we produce is meeting a need. That's why we do the needs assessment. We obviously have a needy elderly population. We have needy families. We have people who are at risk of homelessness. And so while it is certainly environmentally beneficial to ensure that we utilize and reutilize existing stock and existing improved land area. We can't meet the need that's articulated in the plan without some new construction as well. And so ensuring that the production of units is not only environmentally sound, but meeting the need that you've just articulated, David, is important. And if it's not captured in the plan as it's presented in the data, I'd certainly like to make sure that it is, if there's something we can add to make you feel more comfortable in that particular regard. Because I agree with everything you stated.
May I add a clarifying comment as well, just to one of your concerns? So the state has a requirement that that the plan identifies specific properties to target for the development of SHI units. And so that is partly why the Mashpee Commons property is identified, because of there's already a comprehensive permit in place for 382 rental units, and as you correctly said, they're not close to that. But because that existing comprehensive permit already exists, already is approved, and the plan has to identify properties to target SHI development, that is partly why that's there. Actually, when in an earlier draft of the plan, the 40B related strategies weren't right up front, and I believe it was at the direction of the Affordable Housing Committee that it was like along the lines of what Mary said, that the focus should be SHI eligible housing. So that's why those strategies relating to the SHI housing was put front and center.
Okay, Michaela?
Thank you. I want to start with a comment, and my comment is similar to the chair of the planning board. I've been involved in this process from the very beginning. I think I shared with you the needs assessment was tremendously useful to me as I was preparing the community development block grant application. So I am very, very familiar with this document. I've spent countless hours on it. I, too, have made public comment. I've made comment in these meetings. I don't see that the suggestions or comments or my concerns have been addressed. I remain deeply concerned that there are 3 references to amending flow neutral in this document. Those are still there. I'm also deeply concerned of the focus on and the way we juxtapose affordable housing and market rate housing. I don't think there's anybody who would dispute that we need to meet our 10% of affordable housing. I think the chair of the planning board stated that very clearly. We know we need to meet affordable housing, and we should be able to, through redevelopment and perhaps some development where we're sewered, be able to meet that need of 180 units over the next 5 years. No, that's not the dispute. So that we conflate affordable housing in our discussions and what we need, affordable housing and roadblocks seems to me to get in the way of what I see as the real issue with this plan. I have many issues with the plan. One of the major issues is that we as a select board went to the public in May, and we gave them the best information we had. And we explained to them that we were going to be able to remove 42%, mitigate 42% of the nitrogen in Papaneset Bay. We sat there and we all stood behind the chair, who was John Cotton at the time, as he explained the science behind this. Well, that science was based on the water management plan that we have, not a build-out. So if we promised people, and I think we did, and we got tremendous support for $96 million to go towards resolving some of our clean water issues, that we're kind of changing the plan now seems very disingenuous to me. That really troubles me. I think people who might be very stuck financially, the same people that we're talking about protecting, who are trying to stay in their homes, who are willing to pay more taxes to have clean water, shouldn't have to pay more taxes to have clean water that's not going to be cleaned because we continue to build. So I think that's a huge concern. The other concern I have is I am
totally support affordable housing. I'm a proponent of workforce housing. In order to keep our community going, we need workforce housing. I'm aware of that, and I support that. I'm very, very concerned that there's no protection here. So what this plan presents is bringing in market rate housing with no deed restrictions, no protections. So we'll have a lot of market rate housing. We know what's happened in the last 10 years with market rate housing. It just keeps going up. So we're throwing a chain in the lake. I'm sorry. We're interfering with what we're trying to do with water quality. We're building market housing with no protection, no deed restrictions. That market housing presumably could be bought by investors, second homeowners, third home owners, somebody who wants to just have a nice section of homes to rent out on Airbnb. That's not going to help our workforce. I think there are many great strategies, many well-thought-out strategies for improving housing and addressing a housing issue and housing crisis, and I acknowledge we have one. I think this plan falls short in identifying those strategies. This gives us market rate housing to do whatever the market chooses to do with it, and in 5 years we'll come back and say, oh, we couldn't meet that 42%. We might not get a watershed plan passed because we're still polluting the water. Our residents are still paying the taxes for this. And now we have a big problem because our market rate housing we put in was all bought up by investors, and now we need more housing. This is like a dog chasing its tail plan. I just keep looking for, besides the 180 units of affordable housing, I don't see the benefit. And I've said this time and time again, if you had given me this plan and I was up in Central Mass where I used to live, I would say I can buy parts of this plan. We're not. We're in an environmentally sensitive area. We've asked taxpayers to spend millions and millions of dollars, and we've promised those taxpayers that we're going to make a difference. And I don't see it. I think if we adopt this, we're negating what we told taxpayers in May, that we would make a difference in our water quality, that we'd make a difference in how people were going to live. The other issue I have, and I have one more and then I'll be done. No. The other issue I have, and I know Mr. Isbitz attempted to address this in his letter, there's no agreement. First of all, EOHLC only governs affordable housing. So there's not going to be an agreement with EOHLC and the Department of Environmental Protection to change flow neutral, the flow neutral that we're suggesting amending 3 times in this document. And in addition to that, we also promised residents a 0% financing on the first $66 million we have taken out loans for, and for the $96 million that they have supported. We promise 0% financing. And when we toy with flow neutral, not only are we ruining our environment, we're letting people down with regard to cleaning our waters, we're also jeopardizing that. I'm done.
Thank you, Michaela. Tom?
Thank you. So, I'll be brief, very short, straight to the point. So it seems to be at this point that it's not a housing issue, it's a septic system or a denitrification systems. So without that in place, we're not moving forward. So, and I think I love the plan. I mean, if houses, affordable housing, mixture, you can do both in the same, and because you have the density in the development that you're looking at, or the suggested use of the land, would be allowed to have units for less money because you have some units that are bigger units. And I think that makes all the sense in the world. The problem is wastewater. Do we do a tight tank? Do we do a septic system? What can we do to put in place and make this happen? Because everybody wants to build, but nobody wants to put in a wastewater treatment plant. How do we make this? How do we make this work in a short period of time if we can build something and put it together and it'll hold up for 5 or 10 years and then tie into the biggest wastewater system that we need. How do we do that? I don't think anybody's opposed to building. I don't. Whether it's density or not, there are certain areas that allow for density and should be used for that purpose. You want single-family sprawling lots? There's lots around here as well. But it's running out, it's gonna be gone, but most of the town has been built. So, but it's the wastewater. That's what we need to deal with. It's not a housing issue right now. It's not nobody doesn't want this to happen, but we have to address the wastewater. How do we do that? And you must have a better idea than I do.
Well, I guess I want to really hone in on one particular point that Michaela had just expanded on, and it's about the references to flow neutral in the plan. I know exactly the references you're talking about because obviously I pay attention to what decision makers are thinking and feeling about these documents as we present them, and I anticipated these questions, and I started to get the feedback again relative to the assertions that the plan suggests amendments to flow neutral or would compromise our 0% SRF financing. And so I reread the document today in detail to find any paragraph, any sentence that would make me say, oh, I understand the criticism this plan is getting. So I read it again today, and I found the references. But I don't believe that we are reading the same document. We're certainly not interpreting it the same way. The references to flow neutral merely identify that broad, sweeping zoning strategies may require amendments to flow neutral. But it's missing half the picture. It's that this plan articulates strategies that prioritize remaining within the confines of flow neutral. It does not suggest amending flow neutral. It articulates that if you wanted to go further, you might need to, but this plan does not do what Ms. Colombo just suggested at all. And so I disagree with you, Ms. Colombo. Relative to the deed restrictions for households earning at or above 80% of the AMI, that I might agree with you on. Workforce housing has been a critical component of this plan, and we certainly have contemplated ad nauseum producing housing that would be income restricted at levels that would not be SHI eligible, 100% AMI, 120, up to 150. This is the workforce housing that we are coming to understand as agencies and decision makers are trying to define it. So if there are strategies, or we could articulate in the plan what we are currently calling market rate housing and articulate it better, whereas we are producing housing for income levels at or above, or excuse me, above 80% of the AMI with restrictions, I would agree with you on that front, and I think we can make those amendments. But as it pertains to flow neutral and the CWMP, this plan doesn't do what you're suggesting.
May I ask then that any reference to flow neutral in the plan is redacted, since it doesn't seem to be important? And that's just one of my concerns with the plan.
Go, yeah, of course.
Just in response, the plan is required, if you choose to do a housing production plan, to identify barriers to housing. It's just a requirement. I mean, it's objectively a barrier. It has to identify it. And it has to identify ways in which those barriers could be explored. So that's kind of, I think, why it has to reference flow neutral. I mean, if it's at the direction of the town, if you want to take it out. But I think the reference to EOHLC and Mass DEP, the reason why I think that reference is in Mr. Isbit's letter is because the law behind the state revolving fund does actually specify that those land use controls, AKA flow neutral, are done, that I'm not exactly sure what the inner mechanisms are of this, but they are reviewed by EOHLC. So Mass DEP, before they sign off on whatever they do, it says that Mass DEP's Division of Municipal Services will work with applicants and DHCD, that's what it was previously called, to establish these land use controls. So I'm not sure, how that correspondence occurs, but that is, I believe, I don't want to speak for the chair, but that is, I think, what we had discussed with regard to EOHLC's role there.
Right.
Just relative to deletion or redaction of any references, that is up to you. Of course, you can decide to include or redact anything that you deem to be advantageous from your perspectives. I felt it important to include and to retain because we are planners. We are trying to present you with existing conditions and present you with information that allows you to anticipate future conditions. And so it didn't seem prudent to remove it when it's a potential future condition that you will need to tackle.
Madam Chair, I do want to make a comment.
You can make
The housing production plan, the state does require the town to identify barriers. It doesn't have to have the same barriers as other towns have identified, even if that barrier exists. If you submitted a plan with absolutely no barriers identified and no plan to address that barrier, then yes, the state would remove it. I think there's plenty of other barriers that have been identified that striking the flow neutral bylaw completely from the plan would not be a red flag for the state.
Again, there, I think Michaela was right to reference 3 references. None of them, again, suggesting modifying, but identifying it as a potential barrier. So it's not pervasive throughout the document, is what I'm trying to articulate.
Okay. Michael?
I'm surprised you get anything done in this town, ever, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
One person who's on the planning board said she wasn't considered for information, which of course I thought we listened to many times. It seems to me that maybe David has the right answer. Let's just meet again to go over this and meet again to go over this, and someday, before we're in the ground, we'll come to some conclusion. I think we've worked hard at it. I think it's a good plan. I think it addresses many issues that we possibly could. It's far from perfect, and I've read a lot of your minutes and a lot of your meetings, and believe me, neither are you guys. So at the end of the day, let's go back, and we'll have to go back and do it over again and dig deeper into it and focus on the issues that are ultra critical and include everybody who feels like they have to be involved. All of you guys out there got something to say, just settle in. We'll do it again. I think we did a good job, and if we can sit here and be critical all night long. I want to thank them for the work they've done. It's a pretty damn good product. So you're not all happy about it? I'm not surprised. That's all I'm going to say.
Karen?
Yes, hi, Karen Faulkner. There's no question about it. This is it's 95 pages, and it's really a mammoth job you guys did. The graphs and the charts, those are great. Those should stay in, every one of them, I think. The problem I have with this plan is, I did some reading, tried to look up a little bit of the law and whatnot, and I believe that the proposed bylaw, the proposed production plan exceeds the bounds of what a housing production plan is supposed to be. And here's my argument for that. In 2020, the state issued, the state through the Department of Housing and Community Development, which was the predecessor to the EOHC, was it the EOHLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which we're under. That's who we have to talk to, correct? Address. Okay, they had a Q&A in 2020, and the question was, what are housing production plans? An HPP is a community proactive strategy for planning and developing affordable housing. Through an HPP, a community creates a strategy to enable it to meet its affordable housing needs in a manner consistent with the Chapter 40B statute and regulations. Okay, so now the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has taken over. That happened last year in October of 2023. And the purpose of it, as I read, was to create more homes and lower housing costs for mass residents, to distribute funding to municipalities, to oversee the state-aided public housing portfolio, and to operate the state emergency family shelter. This is all about affordable housing. And I go back to what I said at that meeting, that last meeting, which was, I was confused because I understood it somewhere, maybe I got it through Mary or someone, that this was for affordable housing. And that's not what the product is. Therefore, the draft that we're dealing with should not be dealing with market rate housing, market rate rentals. It should be dealing with exclusively affordable housing. This document is really hard to understand. To me, it is.
You did okay.
I read this whole thing a couple times myself, and I'm saying, oh my God. It's really kind of a masterpiece. I could never write it. I could never write anything like this. But it doesn't really give me what I'm looking for. Now, let me tell you something else. The Massachusetts House of Representatives passed the Affordable Homes Act on June 5th, 2024, by a vote of 145 to 13. Now, it still has to go to the Senate. The governor unveiled that act last year with the EOHLC. So here it is, it's a year later. What it includes is $4 billion in capital spending authorizations aimed at attacking the root cause of housing unaffordability. When it passes, if it passes, and I believe it will, we'll need to line up for the money. My question to somebody, if you can answer this, is do we need an HPP approved if we want to get this money?
I don't know the answer to that.
Does anybody
Karen.
know?
It's what money?
If we want to get this money that's coming down, like $4 billion.
Oh. I'm sure the one-stop application would say, do you have an approved housing production plan? And yeah, it's competitive, it's probably not a minimum requirement, but another town that has an adopted HPP probably would rate higher in that category. So it's good to have an HPP. It definitely is.
So we will have an HPP.
We're going to have an HPP.
Okay. Another issue. A number of us are worried about that if we pass this proposed HPP, we'll risk losing our 0% SRF financing for our sewering. I have a similar question or statement that you made, Michaela, about Alan Isbitz's introductory message, which I thought was very good. And Alan, if you could answer these questions for me. You're not saying that the EOHLC works with the Department of Environmental Protection or interfaces with them, right? They're totally independent.
I'm not sure what you're drawing
Oh, I'll read you the sentence here.
Get the mic.
You have to come to the mic.
What was the question?
Oh, God,
Lauren
I
always has the
apologize
best
for my
questions.
croaky voice.
This is not.
Here's what I'm quoting. By working with EOHLC and following existing DEP procedures, we can meet this housing production goal without sacrificing the favorable 0% financing under the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. It is therefore incumbent on Mashpee to pursue strategies that can be approached by both DEP and EOHLC. In this way, we can clear our invaluable water resources and build more affordable housing for our residents. I just want to make clear that EOHLC has nothing to do with DEP, do they?
No, that's not true.
They do.
In fact, there is nothing in federal or state law that says anything about giving up affordable housing for the sake of cleaning our waterways. In fact, it requires us to do both, not in a legal term, but in the intent of the structure of the law. It's saying that those two sides of the government, both at the federal level in EPA and HUD, and on the state level with DEP and EOHLC, they're supposed to collaborate together so that both objectives are achieved in some sort of a balance. We're not saying don't clean the waterways. I frankly am a very strong proponent of cleaning the waterways. We can all see that around us. But the 37 units a year that comes from state law, by the way, in an HPP, is a token in the need
Yes.
and not a serious degradation in our progress toward clean air waterways. So nobody's going to come here and build 200 units of housing in 5 years. That's just not going to happen. And I don't think any of us are in favor of that. This plan calls for quite the reverse. It calls for a slow, deliberate development of housing that meets our need in a balanced way, but doesn't forget about the moderate and middle income. I hope you're not putting a label of market rate housing on that, because we're not talking about market rate housing in this plan. There's nothing in this plan that talks about market rate housing. We're talking about meeting a critical need for people that make $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year, and can't afford to buy a home here. That's the reality. And how can we focus just on low income? And you're saying this is supposed to be just about affordable housing? It is about affordable housing. The strategy for building affordable housing is providing housing for a broader range of people so that it has a greater acceptance and actually gets done. It's a legitimate strategy nationwide. Section 8 is a mixed income housing that meets a need. So I don't understand how you can say this is a market rate document, because there's no market rate housing at all in this document.
So
Zero.
I'm responsible for introducing that term, market rate. I should say non-deed restricted.
Non-deed restricted.
Non-deed restricted. It's a common field term. I
Workforce
apologize, but it should be non-deed restricted.
I don't understand what you see. It should be
So there's no deed.
So when you go on page VI, when you go on page V, it talks about affordable housing development, right? On
Yep.
VI, it's zoning for housing choice. And I hope that we get, to fine tune that a little bit. What's missing from these strategies for housing choice is that the units are deed restricted year round, and any development that comes out of these have at least 10% affordable housing.
One of the reasons why we are focusing so heavily on Section 8 is because that's all deed restricted.
Section 8 mobile vouchers are not deed restricted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sticky
not
vouchers
Section 8.
are.
I'm talking about Section 40, Chapter 40B.
Chapter 40B.
That's what I meant.
20
That's where we're
20 to 25% of the units are affordable,
or 50, or 75, or 100%.
depending on the developer and the financing, yes.
Well,
But
Clare
typically-
Village is a Chapter 40B,
Yep.
100% low income.
They're low-income housing tax
So it
credits, and it's
depends what the
beautiful.
developer and the town wants.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through a comprehensive permit, and it gets vetted by the standard of what the town wants in its town. Now, the wrinkle is, of course, that if you don't have 10%, and the town says, we don't want this because it's not good enough, and they turn it down, and they do have 25% or more affordable housing, that's appealable to the state housing board and can override local zoning.
Right.
But that's a matter of how good we are about dealing with this problem
Right.
and how well we develop the pipeline. So there's no way in my mind that we're ever going to get to the point where we are free. I don't think there's probably more than 2 towns on the Cape that would ever be free from a state override of local zoning, because it's not at 10%. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to build affordable housing either because of that. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to broaden the income so that we're dealing with people who are having a hard time with higher incomes.
I think we can do that if we tighten up the housing choices that are on page VI. I really do.
I want to answer the question about DEP.
Just one second. This plan doesn't get that specific. I don't think.
Could, though. With some simple changes, it could.
I don't think it should. This is not an implementation design. This is a broad brush of tools that have to be massaged and put into a specific context to be real. And all this plan is doing is mentioning a lot of different ways that we can look at a potential for achieving a a responsible and smartly done affordable housing program. It doesn't mean that all the reading you're doing into it is going to happen. It's a tool among many. There are 85 pages, 95 pages.
I'm sorry, Alan, you're looking right at me, but I just don't believe in putting something into a plan or voting for something on a plan I don't agree with and would never endorse it at town meeting and as an implementation. So I think there's just a little bit more room for that to be tightened up.
Okay, we're going to move along. Dale?
I just want to finish my last point. On page 2 of the document, the second paragraph, I think this is the thing that really got me, that I really disagree with. The town adopted a flow-neutral bylaw in 2021, which limits future wastewater flows according to the zoning and wastewater regulations in place as of the CWMP, that's the Comprehensive Waste Management, effective July 1, 2015. While this bylaw allows 4 bedrooms per acre by right and includes provisions for requesting a variance if a project would exceed allowable wastewater flows, broad zoning changes that could yield higher wastewater flows at build-out may require amending the CWMP.
Mm-hmm. Can I speak to that?
Go ahead.
Okay.
The the CWMP capped what the volume was going to be, the flow was going to be. What kind of guarantee do we have that we're going to keep that zero interest loan if that language is in there?
Sure.
Amending the CWMP.
Yes.
I mean, let me just say, why would we even be thinking about doing this? We'd have to go back to the state, wouldn't we? Or we'd have to go back, where would we go back, Mary?
I think Michaela knows better than me.
Where would we go if we amended the CWMP?
I don't understand what you're asking me.
DEP.
Where would we go?
Comprehensive wastewater plan. Let's
Well,
say
you would,
we
I
wanted more.
believe you would have
Why
to
are we
go to
talking about it?
environmental
Nobody's talking about
protection.
amending the
Well, okay.
flow-neutral bylaw anymore.
It's in here.
Right,
No,
right.
we took it out.
Okay. So to answer your question about EOHLC and Mass DEP, so chapter, MGL chapter 29C, section 6, which outlines the, it talks about the state revolving fund specific to, for clean water resources, says Mass DEP's Division of Municipal Services will work with applicants and the, they have an outdated reference to EOH-ED, and then they just updated in May 2023 the language to say the Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities to establish the land use controls. So it is the intent that the land use controls that get developed are in some way, I'm not sure who at EOHLC actually, I'm not sure what the interfacing actually looks like, but that is in the statute that allegedly EOHLC and Mass DEP is supposed to be conversing with EOHLC about that. I don't know the
Could
extent.
you just run that by me again, because I've totally lost this.
Sure. So chapter 29C, section 6, which outlines the state revolving fund parameters, has a reference to Mass DEP's Division of Municipal Services, working with applicants and the formerly Department of Housing and Community Development to establish the land use controls. Land use controls, they abbreviate LUC. That is what the flow neutral bylaw is. It's described in that program as a land use control to limit wastewater to the flows that were determined in the when the CWMP was developed, which is based on a build-out under current zoning. So that's how that is determined. I don't have it in front of me, but the CWMP has an assumed number of units that the build-out was. I really have to go searching for it in these comment responses, but there is a number that was determined in the CWMP for what that build-out would look like under zoning. So what the language there in talking about broader zoning changes is basically saying, if you were to make a bunch of zoning changes, that could compromise what you know, if it's going to produce a lot more housing, because it's, you know, it's essentially changing the wastewater assumptions that the town had when they developed the CWMP. So that's why the plan is not contemplating those zoning changes. Any zoning change still has to adhere to the flow neutral bylaw. The references to amending the CWMP, which, I mean, if they get taken out, you know, what I spoke with somebody from DEP just to make sure I was not misexplaining this, but essentially the relationship between that 0% financing and the CWMP is just contingent on the fact, on whatever, basically that the flow neutral bylaw and your CWMP are in alignment. So if you ever, 10 years, 20 years, whenever down the line, wanted to amend your CWMP and your flow neutral bylaw, there's a process to do them concurrently. And it does not compromise existing financing. It does not compromise your ability to secure future financing. It's.
Well, who has to approve that amending?
I don't know the process. You'd have to ask your
And I
staff.
think what we're going to do is, we're going to have a future meeting.
I think
to
so.
talk about, so people understand the flow neutral and how it affects the SR and everything.
I think the point is here that you asked how can you control this from getting out of hand?
Okay, yes.
Because the control is you. You and the select board, that's the control.
It's our vote.
You've got to approve a plan for development along the way here through the planning board and the ZBA and the select board that says, okay, we can build some affordable housing, but we don't want to jeopardize our clean water effort, and we want to balance. So here's the way we're looking at it, and I hope you're looking at it as 185 units over 5 years is not an unreasonable build. And if that means that for some reason you decide that an amendment to the flow neutral bylaw is necessary to do that, some sort of a waiver to the extent of 185 units over 5 years, then it will be possible to do that by going through DEP procedures, and it will not jeopardize 0% financing and must have the approval of, not approval, but the concurring collaboration with EOHLC. They all work together.
Okay, can we get rid of that? Can we cut that, take that away from the plan?
Well, I think we'll have to go through the plan.
You will go through it. Okay, thank you. It's really, really complicated.
This is complicated. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think that we have no intention of diluting the clean water effort here. All we're asking for is what the state is asking for, a balance between the two.
Okay, Dale? Comments, concerns?
Yeah, now, perks of going last, I think everything was pretty much covered, so I'll keep it really short. I think more joint work needs to be done. I think a lot of answers to concerns are in the plan somewhere. It's kind of hard to maybe find. I think it's being looked at through two different lenses. Like, one is the people. There's one lens where everyone knows everything, so you look at this and you get it, and there's another lens where you don't know anything.
There's a few layers.
It's layered, very layered, and you're looking for answers quickly. So I think more work needs to be done to maybe flesh certain parts out, maybe loosen certain parts. But I think it's a good document. I know that's hard to say.
That could go on forever.
Right.
And I think we could.
We have mechanisms here that we're proposing are tools. This is not a plan. This is not a design. This is a collection of tools with a part of it has a pipeline suggestion that you have to agree with. But don't mistake the tools for a statement that is going to be used against you. You're the decision makers here. Right. Chapter 40B, for example, can be used in a way I'm frankly not too fond of. 75-25 formula. Okay, we get 25% housing out of that, and 75% is unaffordable to the rest of of Mashpee, and that just fuels the land cost problem that we're having. That's not, in my mind, the way to use Chapter 40B. Chapter 40B can be 100% affordable, or it can be a problem. But you're the controls.
Right, you know, but I think my concern would be the controls could change, and who interprets it then? How is it interpreted?
But this doesn't say that it's going to be one way or another. It just, here's the tools that we're going to use and consider, and we're going to put this together in a way that meets these goals. That's what we're supposed to do in the HPP plan.
So I think from everyone's comments and concerns tonight, I think we need to do some more work. Unfortunately, you've done a great job, but I think we need to sit and meet again and go through it and vet out what we want deleted and what we want put in.
Good idea.
At this point, Alan, with everything that has been said
Well,
tonight.
I just hope it is,
It's not something that we could sit tonight and vote on.
I just hope it's efficiently done and doesn't go on forever, that's all. That would be my worry.
And how late of the hour is? Does anybody have any questions or concerns that you haven't heard already? Okay.
Get my pen back out. I think Andrew's coming up.
Andrew?
Microphone.
Oh, you need a mic.
Mike.
Oh.
First, some facts. As former director of the Department of Municipal Services at DEP, let me tell you how it works with the flow neutral. DEP decides, there's no balancing. The law is clear, and it is singularly focused on wastewater flow and wastewater flow only. Doesn't care about what the purposes of the housing are, doesn't care whether they're affordable, not affordable, market, not market. The role of, at the time, DHCD and now Livable Communities is to act as a consult to DEP when a town comes in and says, we have a flow neutral bylaw, we're relying on these techniques of zoning or land use regulation. Communities and Development, Livable Communities' role singularly is to say, those work, those don't work, they're legal or they're not legal. Their role is not to negotiate with DEP over what constitutes flow neutral. It's simply to say, on a straight-faced test, as a town's proposed regulatory suite of actions allow it to reasonably enforce the bylaw and the restrictions that are inherent to the bylaw. That's it. So DHCD, Livable Communities, has no role beyond that. Don't get confused by that. The opinion part of this is, you've heard a lot of talk about taking out the flow neutral stuff. The problem or weakness of this plan, or suite of tools, whatever you want to call it, is that it does not strategically look at the relationship between housing and flow, housing and water quality, and make some directed choices and guidance to you about where you ought to develop. Flow neutral doesn't mean that the allocation method you took, that we all took as a community, to say 4 units per acre, you have the choice of saying, we can concentrate our flow in certain areas of town. You have the choice of saying, there are certain areas of town that are not suitable to be developed, that are critical habitat areas. We want to lessen development pressure on those, transfer that flow capacity to other parts of town where you emphasize the appropriateness of development. The plan is grossly deficient in that it never talks about concentrating development where you have or plan to have sewers. What's the worst thing for this town? The worst thing for this town is to continue to develop the way we have developed. What has current development patterns gotten Mashpee and Cape Cod? Lousy water quality, traffic, high housing prices, and a lack of differential typologies of housing that limit us to single-family detached homes that don't meet the needs for a vast majority of the population. Why would you want to use the same approach to develop what's left if what it got you is what is the problem you're trying to solve? This plan, like most affordable housing plans I've seen, have no answer to the market. Sure, maybe you get the Leclerc Village. Those are the exception. The norm is most development of affordable housing happens as a secondary byproduct of market rate housing. So to get your 185, in most instances, you're building 1,000 units.
Yeah.
So it's not 185 in most cases. It's a hell of a lot more than that. And so, you know, you should be talking about and thinking about where do you want to concentrate development. There's maps out there that was done with APCC and HAC that identify areas of density where it's appropriate to put more home. Concentrate on those things. You're not aggressive enough in blending the two things together. Taking it out and ignoring that it exists means you're going to get a bunch of tools that's not going to result in the outcome you want. It's going to worsen your water quality and all. You're going to get more of the worst. So I would encourage you to step back, blend the two things together, and make some hard choices about what you're going to preserve and where you're going to build density, and have wastewater be the backbone, wastewater infrastructure be the backbone of it. And then you might actually do something for people in this town. Otherwise, you know, you're doing something that's not fish nor fowl. It doesn't accomplish any of what you set out to do. And what's the point? My thoughts.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Can I address that?
Anyone else from the audience want to come up and speak? Are we all done?
Can I?
Head in.
I think it's a mistake to think that the HPP should answer all these questions. The HPP is in the State Department's, HLC's mind, just a broad brush intent to develop affordable housing in certain ways that are enumerated. It doesn't say which ways are those. And you're talking about the town's plan and wanting to put that into this plan, you'll be talking for the next 10 years about how to do that. This plan will never get out. There's nothing wrong with this plan today. It ought to be passed today. And this idea that affordable housing builds by Chapter 40A or 40B builds 10% affordable and 90% market, that's just false. It's a lie. That's not what the law says. That's not what affordable housing is. Developers are doing nationwide and in Massachusetts and on the Cape. Those are not ratios that are being produced. This plan tells you how to go about developing the design further. That's all it does. It meets state guidelines. And you can interpret that either way, and if you decide that you want to put more specificity into this plan, you're going to be talking forever.
Thank you, Alan. Evan, you want to wrap?
I understand where we're going, so I just want to make one final comment
Sure.
in response to Andrew. You know, I don't disagree with what Andrew just said to you. I do believe we should be intentional with how we roll out affordable housing with specific reference to wastewater flows and the adequacy of the infrastructure of where that housing goes. What I don't disagree, or what I do disagree with, is that this plan doesn't do that or suggest that. The zoning strategies in the document specifically identify overlay districts as a mechanism to do just that. But what the plan doesn't do is tell the planning board how to do that planning level work. That's the next step. So I disagree with that portion of the comment. I do agree that we need to create a certain amount of housing diversity, prioritizing redevelopment in areas that has adequate infrastructure to sustain the units. This plan articulates that exactly, so I disagree with half that comment.
Thank you.
But Evan, like to Andrew's point, why couldn't we take it a step further to identify key areas that are identified based on the flow charts? I mean, there's massive amount of information that we have on the phasing, where the phasing needs to be done, the priority areas, water quality, all that stuff. That information exists. It's not like we have to go out and do that work now. So why not take it a step further so that there's something there that we can rally behind to develop these overlays that you speak of, you know, put that in now if the information already exists. I don't think that what he's suggesting is too far.
I don't disagree with you, David, and I think that some of that work's already been accomplished. In fact, we have, with the planning board a number of years ago, we produced a series of maps that identified priority redevelopment areas, considerate of totally what what Andrew had just been suggesting. So if we want to include those as appendices,
I mean,
fine.
they are on the map.
So they are included in the document. That level of work, defining overlays and articulating in a code what is going to be included in that overlays, is a significant amount of planning work that involves community engagement. We can't do it in this document. That's the planning board's job via the strategies articulated in this plan. That's what this document is intended to do.
We might need to put that sentence in there.
And we can certainly
You know what I
accommodate
mean?
that.
That
but
might be,
As I was getting ready to listen to what Andrew had said, I thought he was going to articulate something that I disagreed with totally. I don't. I agree with him. I believe the plan does exactly what he's suggesting.
And I'm not suggesting define the outer extents of the overlays. I'm just saying identify kind of larger, broader areas. There are kind of areas you're looking at to do that. And then we can kind of rally behind that and to push it across the finish line in town meeting to have
The
those
comment is well
overlays.
understood. I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Is this the hottest this room has ever been?
It is
I think so.
Well, a lot of
I don't know how the town manager is still alive
For the
because it is
longest
hot
time.
in here,
But he's
man.
fading
Is
fast.
Can you adjust this?
He is fading.
Open the door and the window will get a draft.
Town manager must be ready to pass out.
I take
Okay.
a motion to adjourn the meeting of the planning board?
Second,
Who made the?
Second.
Oh,
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
The heat was
Thank you,
getting to
planning board.
No,
I got a few more things up.
Dennis is always cool.
I said you know it. Hey, did you know that was me that day? Beep that just.
Okay, hopefully we can go through this.
You were.
I was looking
He
around.
gave you the finger and everything.
Well, it's just to execute. and
Over
then-
there, Amanda Way, right?
He just wanted to clarify, it wasn't him.
Right.
The guy looked just like me.
The tomato that hit me in the head?
I would have thrown a rock. That would have been a tomato.
Okay, let me find that.
This one
I
should
don't
be
think it's
good.
gonna take all that
Quick.
much more.
It's just to,
I think we make a few tweaks, we move a few
and to
statements,
execute the deed
reposition a couple
with
of
the
things.
affordable housing.
Just get it done.
I don't
Constable
understand.
traffic study,
Stop if you do this.
and this one.
They have that.
Thank you.
It's a tactic.
Oh, thank you, Carol.
That's the problem, is it chooses a threat and say no.
Got
And
it,
again,
thank you.
right now, we're served all these lawsuits now. We got lawsuits now, yeah,
I got one
and
coming.
you know who they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, everybody, we have a lot left on our agenda.
and we can't afford
So
to
if
fight
you
'em.
would like to take your conversation outside, I would appreciate it.
Want me to stay here and fan you?
Karen?
Maybe.
Gotta get the housing trust.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think you can do that.
Alan?
Is he the only one missing? It's just Alan?
No.
No, Gary's
Well,
here.
Sal's
But
across.
Gary's here.
Gary's here.
Lions here.
I just saw him.
Oh, he's coming up?
Where did he go?
Richard's here.
Oh, there's Gary.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you. And Richard's here.
How come we don't have name tags?
Okay, I need to convene the joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust. Discussion and approval of the following with regards to 12 Cypress Circle. Offer to purchase. Evan? Oh, that's after. I'm sorry. I got the graphics started. Just trying to find my papers. Do you have it?
Yeah,
I don't have it.
Yeah.
Apologies, Madam Chair.
Well, we're the Affordable Housing Trust. Okay, Evan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I should have with me on the Zoom, I don't know if I can see it, but Jeff Dirk from Vanass and Associates. I've been working with Vanass and Associates on the transportation impact assessment that the trust authorized many months ago relative to a proposed affordable housing project at 209 Old Barnstable Road. As you may recall, I had sought to initiate a community engagement process. Are we doing the?
I don't know which one you want to do first.
I think I might just dive in on this one, if that's okay, Madam Chair, because Jeff's been on the line for a while. Is it okay if I jump
Yes,
to
right
209? I'm sorry. So relative to 209, and I know most of the audience this year is interested in this topic. My office had sought to initiate a community engagement process in and around 209 Old Barnstable Road for the purposes of facilitating a discussion on an affordable housing project at the site, with the understanding that the neighborhood had numerous concerns regarding the development of the subject property. I had begun preliminary discussions with a group of stakeholders from the Quashnet Valley area, including the Quashnet Valley Estates and the Quashnet Valley condominiums. And all of the property owners within the project area generally have received letters from me as important milestones have been reached in the project. Most of the critical concern, as I understood it, was presented to me in my office, pertained to existing traffic conditions and concerns about future conditions with the addition of a new project, mostly with regard to vehicle travel speed, pedestrian amenity, and pedestrian safety. So I had asked you many months ago to authorize, would you like me to pause?
I have him on the computer, but he's not on the monitor.
Oh, I see. I don't know if he'll be on the monitor till he speaks.
Oh,
Maybe that's the
okay.
case.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Anywho.
Thank you.
You had authorized the traffic study for the specified purpose months ago. We've procured Vanessa & Associates to complete the study. They began data collection, I believe, in mid-December, just before Christmas or shortly thereafter, early in the new year. And early in the process of data collection, we convened a meeting for the neighborhood to articulate what their anecdotal experience was in the general project area relative to traffic flow, traffic safety, and pedestrian safety. And so the data was evaluated with the qualitative anecdotal evidence provided directly to the consultant as they evaluated their report. So the report has been presented to you. It was delivered to me in April. I provided the draft to representatives of the association on April 30th, and I noted to them that that we would hold a presentation with our consultant so that he could present to the trust with the neighbors here also to listen to what his findings were and what his recommendations are for transportation improvements in the quarter to accommodate the project. Okay. In my opinion, the consultant's findings were favorable in anticipation of future build-out conditions, and his findings were that the project could be accommodated safely within the existing transportation network with a series of recommendations implemented. And so with that, I would pass it along to Jeffrey Dirk from Vanessa & Associates, who's joining us via Zoom to present the TIA for 209 Old Barnstable Road. And I know he's prepared a presentation, but he could certainly be available to answer any questions you may have. I do want to also note that the neighborhood has been very engaged throughout this process. I know many have expressed concerns and questions to me, and I know many are eager for answers. So with that, I'll pass it along to Jeff, and I'll sit tight if there's anything that I can be of value later.
Okay.
So thank you, Evan, and I'll just start speaking to see if we'll switch over to the, okay, there we go. So hopefully everyone can see me. Thank you again, Evan, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. As Evan had mentioned, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm the managing partner with Vanessa & Associates, and we've been retained by the town to conduct an evaluation of the property where an affordable housing project is proposed at the corner of Lowell Road and Old Barnstable Road. Just before I get into my presentation, I just think it's important. I know there's been a lot of discussion this evening about affordable housing, just what our role is on this project. So we are retained by the town to undertake an assessment of how the project would impact the transportation infrastructure. The role of our review and the study we've undertaken is not to
really go through like a planning board approval process for this site. What it is to evaluate the existing conditions, as Evan had mentioned, predict future conditions, and then look at how the project relates to those future conditions and what improvements may be needed to accommodate the built out of the project. So it's a little bit different than if we were presenting a project to you for approval. It's really looking at, can the project be accommodated with certain improvements at this location. And so that's what the study looks like. So I'm going to just go through a series of slides to talk about the process that we undertook. As Evan had mentioned, it was a public process. We did have a meeting with the neighborhood group to listen to comments that they have and really input in the transportation assessment. So hopefully as those that participated in the process have had a chance to look at the transportation study, it incorporates a lot of the feedback that we had received for them. It may not answer all of the questions, but hopefully it has some data in there that's helpful as questions may arise or just to get a better understanding of the project. So I'm going to share my screen and go through my presentation, and let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, Jeff.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I'll just jump right in. By way of a summary of the transportation assessment, the studies are prepared in accordance with specific standards, and these standards are set by the Department of Transportation. On the Cape, they also follow Cape Cod Commission guidelines. So in particular, as we're evaluating the project, if we were not on the Cape, we typically are required to look at average conditions, average month conditions. On the Cape, of course, we're concerned with seasonality. So not only do we look at average traffic flow conditions, which is essentially 9 months of the year roughly of what those conditions look like, we're also required to look at peak summer month conditions, so July, August conditions as well. And so we're assessing the project under those two scenarios, average conditions, which is the majority of the year, and then the peak summer month conditions, and looking at how the project and the transportation infrastructure functions under each of those conditions. Probably most important that we're looking at, it's not just the movement of vehicles, but we're also looking at pedestrians and bicycles and safety of those alternative modes of transportation. That's particularly important at this location, just given the fact that we have 2 schools just down the road from the project off of Old Barnstable Road. So, we heard a lot of feedback from the neighborhood about school-related traffic and how that impacts the quality of flow along Old Barnstable Road. So, that's another specific condition that we evaluated in the transportation assessment. Now, in looking at the project as we've evaluated it, in terms of the overall size of the project, so the project that we had looked at, and this was developed as a part of the feasibility study that was originally undertaken for the site, it was determined the site could yield approximately 24 multifamily units, so 24 units that would be clustered in a single building. So that's the development program that we're assessing as a part of the project. So as we looked at the impacts of a 24-unit development proposal on this site and how it impacted motorist delays and vehicle queuing along the roadways in the area, the additional 24 units was not shown to result in a significant impact or increase in delays or vehicle queuing. 24 units of housing at this location would produce somewhere between about 37 and 45 trips during the peak hours. And so that 37 to 45 trips during an hour, it's distributed over the course of that 60-minute period. It's not that all arrives or departs at the same time, so it's dispersed. And so because of that, we didn't show again that there was any significant impact. Significant impact, as we've defined it for this project, was delays at any intersection did not go up by any more than 5 seconds, and that those increased delays as it relates to backups at intersections, that you wouldn't see any more than about 3 vehicles in queue beyond what's out there today. Now, I'm going to preface that remark by saying that does not mean that traffic is free-flowing. We did identify as a part of the assessment, particularly during the school peak hours, that there are delays, long delays at specific intersections, and that those delays translates into vehicle queuing. So going back to what I had said, an increase of 5 seconds or less, or an increase in vehicle queuing of no more than 3 vehicles, that's on top of those conditions. So if you've got a backup of 5 cars, let's say, what we're saying is that backup will go from 5 to 8. So it's not saying that traffic, again, is free-flowing or that you don't have delays. It's saying how the project impacts those existing conditions. So as it relates to the access points into the property, so now not looking at the specific off-site intersections, but looking at getting in and out of the project site, there were two access scenarios we looked at. We evaluated a driveway off of Old Barnstable Road. We also looked at a driveway off of Lowell Road, and we looked at, whether one of those conditions was better than another or more favorable than another. As we looked at delays under either of those scenarios, there wasn't any significant delays getting into or out of the project site from either of those scenarios. So from the standpoint of operations and delays, access to the property could be provided from either one of those roadways and be favorable. We do have a recommendation in terms of what we would suggest is the best scenario for access into the property, and I'll talk about that later on in the presentation itself. As I mentioned, safety is a critical condition that we evaluate as part of the project. As Evan had mentioned, we're looking at vehicle travel speeds. We're also looking at motor vehicle crash history in the area. And I'll show you the study area in a moment, but there were two high crash locations, probably very familiar to everyone in the town. One was the Route 151 Old Barnstable Road intersection. That's a state designated high crash location. The town is undertaking, the town of Mass DOT are undertaking improvements at that intersection to improve safety. So hopefully that will address that high crash intersection. The other location is the Old Barnstable Road, Great Neck Road North intersection. That's been a high crash location for several years, and it continues to be so. There was a road safety audit done at that intersection to identify improvements. Those improvements have not been undertaken at this time. So we'll talk about that and again, a little later on in the presentation. Lastly, with regard to safety, is making sure that as we're looking at those two different access conditions that we evaluated, so again, driveway off of Lowell Road or a driveway off of Old Barnstable Road, one of the things we look at as well is sight lines. So can you see a vehicle that's approaching you, and as you're exiting those driveways, can you look to the left or right? Can you see a car that's coming at you based on the speed that people are actually traveling, which is above the posted speed limit? And what we found was, again, either one of those driveway situations, you could provide the required sight lines or safe operation of the driveways. So now we're going to get into a little bit more detail in the transportation assessment itself. So this slide shows the location of the project shown here in the yellow. This is 151 here. The rotary shows up prominent here. Old Barnstable Road here, and then continuing along from 151 over to Great Neck Road North, and then Lowell Road continuing from the project site in a northeasterly direction intersecting Great Neck Road. So that was essentially the study area that we evaluated. It was Old Barnstable Road in its entirety between 151 and then coming and bending around and coming out at Old Great Neck Road, and then Lowell Road continuing from the project site northeasterly to Great Neck Road North. And this slide shows that study area. So this diagram that you see here is the study area that we evaluated, and each of the intersections, critical intersections along the roadways itself. So as we're looking at the study, the first thing is to measure traffic volumes. So we measured traffic volumes along Old Barnstable Road, along Lowell Road. So on Old Barnstable Road, we actually measured traffic volumes and vehicle travel speeds at two locations. So at a location in the vicinity of the project site, and then along the segment between Lowell Road and Great Neck Road. And then we also measured volumes and speed on Lowell Road between Old Barnstable Road and Great Neck Road North. We also measured traffic turning movement counts. So during each of the peak hours on the roadway, we measured traffic volumes at the 151 intersection with Old Barnstable Road. We measured volumes at the Old Barnstable Road intersection with Lowell Road, Great Neck Road and Lowell Road, and then Great Neck Road at Old Barnstable Road. So given the fact that we have a school in this area, or two schools actually, the traffic volumes as we're collecting data, as I mentioned, we measured speed and volume along each of these roadways over a 2-day period, so 48 hours at 2 points along Old Barnstable Road and along Lowell Road. Then we measured traffic volumes at each of these intersections I had mentioned during the morning peak hour, which is basically between 7 and 9 in the morning. We collected data, so that captures the school drop-off period. And then in the afternoon, we actually conducted an extended traffic count from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the evening. And the purpose of that was to make sure that we looked at not only school-related volumes, but that we were also looking at commuter volumes. So those volumes that would happen generally between 4 and 6 p.m. So it was very comprehensive in terms of the data collection effort that we looked at. As we were collecting the roadway volumes, so again, that 48-hour volumes, I mentioned we were measuring travel speeds as well. So just looking at the traffic volumes on these roadways as we've measured them. So between Route 151 and where Old Barnstable Road intersects Lowell Road, that section of roadway accommodates somewhere close to about 8,000 vehicles per day under average conditions. During peak summer month conditions, the number jumps to about 10,000 vehicles. So it's influenced by those summer-related volumes. That the 8,000 to 10,000 vehicles breaks up about 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles travel along the section of Old Barnstable Road by the school, so between Lowell Road and Great Neck Road North. And then the balance of those volumes, so that would be between, say, 7 to about 9,000 vehicles, let's say, continues along this Lowell Road section to Great Neck Road North. So the balance of the traffic, or the bulk of the traffic, as it travels up to Old Barnstable Road at its junction with Lowell Road, most of that traffic continues. So what that's saying is really the Old Barnstable Road, Lowell Road corridor is functioning as kind of a bypass road to get you from 151 to Great Neck Road North to allow you to bypass the rotary. And the traffic volumes show that. Lesser volumes travel down past the school. So that's where we have our lower volumes, about 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles per day. Now, looking at travel speeds on the roadway, the posted speed limit on these roadways, all of them, is 30 miles an hour. So that's the posted speed. As we're measuring the traffic volume, so as I mentioned, we're measuring speed and volume over a 48-hour period. So our sample size is somewhere between about, let's say, Old Barnstable Road over 2 days, it's about 16 to 20,000 vehicles that we're measuring the speed of. Lowell Road is somewhere close to about 15,000. And then on Old Barnstable Road, we're measuring the speed of about 5,000 vehicles. So looking at those speed measurements, the section of Old Barnstable Road between 151 and Lowell Road, the majority of the vehicles are traveling just about 4 to 5 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. So going somewhere around 35 miles an hour. It obviously varies along the road. If you are at the bend where Country Club Lane is, you have lower speeds. But generally along the section of roadway where you're closer to the project site, the speeds are closer to about 35 miles an hour. And again, that's the majority. Some people are going faster than that, but the majority of the people are going 35 miles an hour or less. The section of Old Barnstable Road by the school is about the same, even with consideration of the speed of the school-related traffic and the school zone. The general speeds up close to where the site is located are somewhere between about 34 to 35 miles an hour as well, again, the majority of the traffic. The section of Lowell Road is actually where we found the higher travel speeds, and that might be what others have experienced. Those speeds are closer to 37 miles an hour, so we have higher travel speeds on that section of roadway itself. One of the other things I want to point out on the slide here, because it's important as we're looking at the context of the subject property, which again is at the corner of Lowell Road and Old Barnstable Road in this area here. What you're seeing in terms of the color-coded lines that are on here, where you see an orange dashed line, that's where there are existing sidewalks. Where there are blue lines, that's where there are existing crosswalks. And where you see the green lines, that's where there are golf cart crossings. A particular emphasis of our conversations with the community did deal with these golf cart crossings and the safety of those crossings. The safety not only as it relates to the golfers using those crossings, but also just for general traffic driving along these roadways that encounters a golfer or a golf cart crossing in each of those locations. So as we talk about our findings, we did look at each of these crossings and have recommendations for them. There is a need for some improvements independent of this project, and so we have offered some suggested recommendations for how those crossings might be enhanced to be able to provide enhanced safety for each of the crossings. I also point out the lack of sidewalks along Old Barnstable Road to extend up to where the project site is shown. So some of those things just jump out at you as you're looking at the project site to say, if we want to encourage alternative modes of transportation, we're looking at affordable housing where not all residents or may have an automobile. We want to make sure that we've got these appropriate accommodations so that you don't need to have an automobile, or if you're a two-person household and there's only one automobile, that there's alternative modes to be able to get to where you might need to be, walk to school, recreate, or do shopping opportunities, or get to a Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority bus. So again, these are things as we're looking at the study that jump out at us as we're looking at even just this graphic as some areas for improvement. Now, speaking of Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority bus service, there is a bus line in this area. You see the B here, so this is where the Mashpee Village is located. The Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority bus does come up and service that area and then goes back to 151. So it does not at the present time extend up to where the project site is located. But again, it's an opportunity that service does exist in the area. So possibly with affordable housing in this location, an opportunity to extend that bus service to the project site itself. So now we're looking at the trip generation or traffic characteristics of the project. So that's what's shown on the slide here. So you heard me mention earlier that 37 to 45 trips during the peak hour. So that's what's shown on the slide here. So this is our estimated traffic that may result from this project. So this is net new trips that would get added to each of those roadways and through those intersections that we had mentioned. So the way these numbers are developed, they're developed using trip generation statistics that are published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And they do have data for various types of land uses. So as a transportation planning professional, if we understand the land use that's being proposed for a property, we're able to look at trip statistics for similar land uses that have been published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And then knowing the number of units that are proposed, we can estimate the amount of trips or the trip-making characteristics of the project themselves. So what this slide shows here is 20 trips associated with a 24-unit multifamily residential development. The numbers are developed based on studies that have been conducted at similar type of developments in a similar setting. And what I mean by a similar setting is these numbers do not reflect use of public transportation or pedestrian or bicycle trips. So this is basically an auto-centric project, or the trip numbers are representative of an auto-centric project where you don't have those options to walk, bike, or use public transportation. So looking and focusing on the far right-hand column where I have total listed, the large number that you see at the top, the 230, so this is the 24-hour number. So if you stood at the driveway to the project site and you counted every vehicle that goes in or out of the project over a 24-hour period, this is the number that we'd expect you to arrive at. So 24 units would be expected to produce 230 vehicle trips. It would be 115 entering, 115 exiting. And this includes all traffic. So FedEx, UPS, Amazon delivery, Uber, Lyft, Grubhub. It's everything that a residential community would have in terms of traffic. It incorporates everything. Now the next two numbers are those peak hour numbers. So these are the traffic volumes that would be expected to be generated during the highest traffic volume hour on the roadway itself. So if we looked at the peak hour on Old Barnstable Road or Lowell Road, the morning peak hour occurs between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning based on the measurements we had taken. So this is the 37 is the amount of traffic we expect the project would reduce between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning that would coincide with the peak on the roadway. So this would be basically the peak period of people, let's say, driving their children to school in the morning. The project will add 37 vehicles to the roadway over the course of that 1 hour period. The second number, the 45, now this is the corresponding volume that would happen during the evening peak hour. So in this area, the evening peak hour is somewhere between 4:30 and 5:30 in the evening. That's when the traffic volumes are at their highest level. So that may not coincide or does not coincide with the peak pickup period at the school. So the project would generate less than 45 vehicles during the time period when the school is having their peak pickup and the peak pickup period in the afternoon. But between 4:30 and 5:30 in the evening, when the volumes on the roadways are at their highest level, this project would add about 45 vehicles on top of that. So the next two slides, once we've understood the amount of traffic that's produced, now we need to add it onto the roadway network. And so this gets to what we've called dispersal. So one of the reasons why the project doesn't produce significant impacts at any one intersection is because as you get further away from the project site, the numbers get smaller. And what this slide is showing is that as you get away from the project site, these percentages that you see is how those trips get distributed to each of the various roadways. And you see on this slide, we've labeled it site access, it's scenario 1. So in this condition, this is where a driveway would be located on Lowell Road, and how the traffic would then go from the driveway and disperse itself onto the roadway network. So what you generally see in looking at the slide is about 20% of the trips would be oriented on Lowell Road to and from the northeast. So that traffic is heading up to Great Neck Road and is going to travel north essentially on the roadway network. The majority of the trips, 80%, are traveling either to the west or to the south from the project site. And of that 80%, you see the majority of it does want to head down toward the school area and out to Great Neck Road. A smaller percentage of that, about 30%, is heading out toward 151. So that's the way we see the trips being dispersed from the project. So this is the dispersal of that 37 peak hour trips in the morning, the 45 peak hour trips in the evening. As you get away from the project site, what you see is the numbers get smaller and smaller, and that's why we're saying that the project didn't result in any significant impact. Again, delays going up by less than 5 seconds, and vehicle queuing increasing by no more than 3 vehicles at any intersection. This slide here labeled scenario 2, this is the condition where the driveway comes out onto Old Barnstable Road, and you see as you get away from the site, the distribution is exactly the same. The only difference here is how that project gets out to those roadways. So in this case, more of that traffic has to flow through the Old Barnstable Road, Lowell intersection road in order to get to those other destinations versus this scenario 1. So once we've understand the trip characteristics, these distributions, we add the project's traffic onto the roadway and we assess the impacts of the project under average conditions and peak conditions, look at what those impacts are, and then provide recommendations for consideration should the project advance on the project site. So I'm going to go through those recommendations now that we came up with. So the first thing is to look at the site access configurations for the project. So there were 3 site access configurations that we looked at. The third one is actually a variation on the first 2. So as you saw in the last slides, option 1 was access by way of Lowell Road. Option 2 is access by way of Old Barnstable Road. Option 3 was we've called it the Great Hay Road connection. So basically running a roadway that goes between or connects Lowell Road and Old Barnstable Road, and then you would intersect or provide a driveway into the project site by way of a driveway that would be located somewhere opposite Casper Circle, which comes off of Old Barnstable Road. So those were the 3 scenarios we looked at. As we looked at those 3 scenarios for potential access to the site, our recommendation was that the access be provided by Lowell Road. The reason why that was our recommendation for the project site wasn't that it was superior in terms of all operating conditions to either option 2 or option 3, but it was really because of the fact that as you come out or have traffic coming out on the section of Old Barnstable Road between Great Neck Road and Lowell Road, what is experienced there, especially during the school pickup and drop-off periods, is that the intersection of Old Barnstable Road and Lowell Road experiences significant congestion, which results in delays in vehicle queuing that extends on Lowell Road, basically down toward the school area. So if you're coming out of the project site by way of a driveway that comes out onto Old Barnstable Road, you're almost forced to go through that intersection. So especially as we're looking at the school time periods, if someone comes out and turns right exiting that driveway, they're turning right into the back of a queue of vehicles that's backed up from that intersection already. The same, if you look at access off of Lowell Road, the same condition does not occur. So as you're looking at the distribution of traffic that we had talked about, you can exit the project, turn left or turn right, and you don't experience the queuing that would occur at that intersection. So it's advantageous as we look at the ability of the driveway to be able to function and not add additional traffic, especially trying to get up onto either Lowell Road or Old Barnstable Road during the school time periods when that school-related traffic is also trying to get through that same intersection. So that's why we had recommended option 1 over option 2. it just seemed to be more advantageous in terms of the operations of that intersection, as well as the ability to get in or out of the project site itself. Option 3, which is basically developing a connector road between Lowell Road and Old Barnstable Road, and that would, would provide the ability to come out either one of those roadways from the project. However, the concern, of course, is the cut-through traffic. So I mentioned early in the presentation that Old Barnstable Road to Lowell Road does function as a cut-through roadway. So the concern with option 3 is just, if you think about the ability now, if you're school-related traffic and you want to bypass that intersection where we have backups, you could use that connector roadway to be able to get right out to Lowell Road. So we viewed that as not being advantageous. To the extent that that were desirable, there would be the need to implement some traffic calming measures or something so that it wouldn't function as a high-speed cut-through in the area. So that's why we didn't really recommend that, but it could be done with appropriate countermeasures in place. So the next set of recommendations that we have deal with site access. So these are really just recommendations as the site plan is advanced. These are just good planning practices that we want to see as the site plan is developed. So as the engineer is working on it, just gives them guidance as to how they should look at circulation, the width of roadways, that we're developing internal connections for sidewalks to be able to come out to Lowell Road or Old Barnstable Road, things like that. So they're just good planning practices. So now looking at the off-site recommendations. So our off-site recommendations really parrot what we heard from the neighborhood, as well as our review of the roadway network. So these are recommendations, the first set of recommendations are dealing with Old Barnstable Road and Lowell Road and the corridor. And we've kind of broken it up into 3 segments. So the first is really the segment of Old Barnstable Road between 151 and Country Club Lane. We heard a lot of discussion through the feedback that we had from the neighborhood about Country Club Lane in particular, and as you saw in the beginning of the presentation, that sharp, almost 90-degree bend or dogleg bend that occurs where Country Club Lane is located. Now, that bend in the roadway poses some challenges both for travel along Old Barnstable Road, but for traffic that's exiting Country Club Road. Country Club Road, as you know, has residential development that's going to take place along that roadway, so we're going to be adding additional traffic demand to that intersection. And so even without that, there's a need for improvements. And so we provided a series of improvements or suggestions for improvements to take place along Old Barnstable Road as well as for Country Club Lane. The first thing is, it's a great tree-lined roadway, and it should remain as a tree-lined roadway, giving it that rural country feel to it. But as we're looking at the curvature of the roadway, some selective trimming of vegetation, especially along the inside of the road. So this would be for traffic that's traveling from, let's say, southwest to northeast along the roadway. Some trimming of the vegetation on the inside would help with improving sight lines so you could actually see what's on the other side of that curve. So we've recommended that that be considered as a part of an improvement measure. There are curb warning signs, so those are the yellow signs that have the little symbol that says, there's a curb ahead. Those signs are in need of replacement so that they're more visible. They have better reflective properties. We've suggested as well that some enhancements be made to those signs. One of them is placing reflective yellow tape on the signpost itself. The other thing is that very often what you'll see where we want to really point out the fact that there's a curve is that you embed LED type of lights into the sign panel itself. They're solar activated or solar powered, and it just provides a flashing indication so that it draws your attention to the sign itself and that there's a curve ahead. So that's something to be considered. Installing chevron signs, which are basically those arrow type signs that you see mounted on the outside of the curve. So this just provides guidance as you're driving through the curve. Now, we talked about speed on the roadway, so the speed is above what's the posted speed limit, but it's also above what's desirable for the curve of the road. Speeds through this curve should really be no more than 20 to 25 miles an hour, given the nature of the curve itself. So we've suggested that possibly installing some radar speed feedback signs, which would be a good idea, just to let people know, the speed they're driving and try to get them closer to the posted speed, which would hopefully get them to slow down a little bit more as they're going through the curve itself. The other challenge is really the width of Country Club Lane. Country Club Lane is really too wide for what is necessary for a two-way roadway. So we've suggested that that road to be narrowed up to no more than 24 feet in width. The width of that roadway, just really as you're driving in the opposite direction through the curve, so this is going from northeast to southwest on the curve itself. The width of that intersection, for someone who's not familiar with the road, does not provide real guidance to you that the road is bending, because what you see is a wide opening where Country Club Lane is, and it's not really telling you where the edge of Old Barnstable Road is to provide some guidance around the curve. Tightening up that intersection would give you a good curb line and visual cue and reference to where the edge of the roadway itself is. So now moving on to the golf cart crossings. As we looked at each of the golf cart crossings, what was pointed out by the neighborhood and found as a part of our study is the sight lines to each of those crossings don't.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
I'm going to need to just slow you down a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
appreciate you intervening.
No,
Jeff- I'm sorry.
we do have all the information that you have given it in front of us. And I think that this, go ahead. I'm going to give it to Evan, or.
Oh, well,
We don't know what the people are
Well, I know, these people are here for this project.
I tried to articulate when I submitted the memorandum to have this on the agenda, that this was going to take time. This has been the most critical part of this project for this neighborhood since I started it
Yes.
6 to 8 months ago. So I understand there's an interest in getting through this meeting, but this is critical to understand. You are the decision-making authority for the issuance of an RFP for this site. Traffic has been the #1 identified issue
understand that.
by this neighborhood for this project.
Yes.
So it is critical you understand it.
It looked like he was getting pretty close to the end. I mean, it was,
Madam Chair, what I'm very curious about is, everybody's got the information, it was in the packet. I'm just curious as to whether or not anybody in the audience might have a question relative to a simple question with a simple answer that can be answered without hearing another 40 minutes.
Sure. Number one.
I defer you to Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Your discretion.
Okay. I mean, first of all, he pointed out a few things.
We need to
that-
know your name.
Oh, Erica Adams, Quashnet Valley Condominium, and all of my people left. It's lucky they didn't die. Yeah, so basically, he's pointed out what we already know, how it's like the Indy 500 on Lowell Road from Great Neck Road, how there is a horrible intersection at Old Barnstable and 151, and then that's replicated at the other end of Old Barnstable on Great Neck Road. What he didn't mention is there's a rotary that I know, because I love architecture, and I sat through all those meetings that they had, with Buff Chase, asking everybody what did they want from Mashpee Commons, and then the answer was, well, we can't do that. But they said that that rotary is the worst one in the country. I didn't need his information for that. I drove taxi 30 years ago in Boston to put myself through grad school, and I know a bad intersection when I see it. So I go behind Stop and Shop, and I curve around, and I never use 151, by the way. I don't, right? So with all these things in place, I'm thinking about his dialogue was like so intricate, right? It's reminding me of my father, who worked in think tanks for the government. And they asked him about the Warren Commission. My father said, he had like a month to do this. And there were like 80 books this thick. He said if they knew the answer, they could have done it in 50 pages. So I think that, this argument is elusive to the very basic fact that any child could see, everybody gets out of school, it's a clogged road, I have to go over the little red, yellow line, because all the cars are lining like that, it becomes a one-way street after, around 2 o'clock, and I'm not up at 7 to see the same thing happen. we don't need more density in that area. It's not about NIMBYs or, not in my backyard. Clearly, this is a problem for the whole country, that we need subsidized housing or affordable housing. We don't need to make the impact of the traffic worse than it already is. I mean, cutting the trees along Lowell Road as Old Barnstable turns, that's so obvious, but no one's done it yet, and I don't expect putting yellow lines there is going to make anything better when you've already got 3, 4 high-impact, ridiculous traffic situations. I'm paying a lot of money every month for somebody to do a hit and run for me. All I did is came out of my parking lot, Quashnet Valley. I went 50 feet. The person was 8 car lengths behind me. That was on purpose. I put my blinkers on. I turned in. He goes over the thing, over the yellow line, and hits me, and then keeps going, right? So I pay for that. We don't need more of that. I mean, a child could figure this out. I want to know how much he's being paid and by whom to put this in.
You.
Yeah, I don't want to pay for this. I don't know if that was articulate, but when I see bullshit, I mean, I have to say something. Very well put together, by the way.
No offense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name's David Mills. I live at Quashnet. And I could make comments. I'm not going to. I'm going to respond to what you said about, does anyone have a question? You said, sorry about my voice. You said, well, we have these packets in front of you, in front of us. Well, we don't. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm here, is because the contents of this study was going to be released.
Cars are screeching near misses to people. And that's on us. I think that's on us in this room here. So I would just close by saying the current roads are terribly unsafe for pedestrians, vehicles, school children, and adding 24 apartments with 48 vehicles is just going to significantly increase the risk of a serious accident that impacts pedestrians, school children. Thank you.
I think you covered the points for both of us, Don. The only thing I guess I'd leave you with is the law of probability, suggests that something tragic is going to happen. From Old Barnstable Road to Lowell Road, something bad's going to happen. 10,000 vehicles a day. That data was captured, I think, 2 days, third week of December. So I question, really, in the busy months of the year, what does that look like? Something bad is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. I wouldn't want that on my conscience. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I wouldn't want that. To John's point, this is about safety and it's about water quality. And if we try to prioritize, continue building while we have, particularly the water quality challenges that we have, we're making a mistake. Fix the problem, then go on and figure out how to develop from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go first.
I have just a few specific questions. Colton Atkinson, Algonquin Avenue for Jeffrey. So first and foremost, just in general, if a project includes construction of a shared use path, does that tend to have an effect on the amount of traffic without additional development? So if there's no additional development, you just build a shared use path, does that affect the traffic on the road?
So it depends upon how you construct it. If you construct the shared use path offset from the edge of the roadway and you're not relating the shared use path to any development, it probably doesn't do anything to the traffic flow. If you narrow the road and build the shared use path close to the roadway, it would have a traffic calming effect to it. So it depends upon how you design it.
Do you expect less vehicles to travel along the road if they do build one?
So again, your question was, if you build a shared use path that's not associated with development, how does it affect the flow of traffic along the roadway? It doesn't do anything to the flow of traffic along the roadway. If you build a shared use path and you connect it to development, then yes, it can reduce traffic volumes as those developments can access the pathway. So if that's your question, if constructing a shared use path reduces traffic volumes, yes, it has the potential and opportunity to reduce traffic volumes if people can use it to get to places that they want to go. Then it would reduce traffic volumes on the roadway if people choose to get out of their cars and use the shared use path.
Why, in the conclusions of your study, did you recommend a sidewalk instead of a shared use path?
I don't think that we necessarily, I don't know that we were recommending one over the other or one versus the other. I mean, certainly we recommended that a sidewalk be placed, and the reason for the sidewalk was because of what you heard and the fact from the previous commenters, but also because what I had shown on my figure, which was that there's a missing sidewalk segment. So all the discussion about the safety of particularly school children walking to the school, sidewalk is an integral part of a safety plan that we developed to go along with that. If there's enough room and there's a desire line to build a shared use path so that bicyclists could use it, absolutely. That would be superior if that's something that could be constructed.
Okay, thank you.
That was quick. My name's Larry Moran. I'm here on behalf of Nancy Marcellus, who's been the chairman of the Quashnet Valley Condos for the better part of a decade. She saved the condo association. She and new people that got there and a new board, they've done a fantastic job. In the process, however, there have been a lot of new people that have moved in there, expanded, a lot of tenants, a lot of people that in this 4-person limit unit, a lot of the units have 6 to 8 people in them. The vehicles are so crowded that they basically could sit on top of each other. So the condominium complex is already expanded beyond its capabilities. But I'm not here on behalf, I'm not going to let the traffic issue drive this project. I'm looking what Tom O'Hara said a couple of hours ago, that we're not here about the plan, we're here about wastewater. Isn't that what you said? Okay. We're not here about traffic only. We're here about the multiple issues that are involved. And please do not be misled by the survey conducted at the condo level that that's what they focused on, because that's what people in their 70s and up, and I'm up in that category, and many of you are, if you're not there, you will be. You focus on the things that are right in front of you, okay? The things that are not mentioned is the value of property, the effect of property values in general, the fact that it's already come out, but the things that this project can't be governed by traffic. It's got to be governed by a plan, a site plan. You haven't seen the site plan. I haven't seen it. But all the other things that have been mentioned, the sewer, the septic, the water, everything. The other thing is that I guess the new little street they put in there is called Casper Circle, I believe. I saw that on a map. I hope it's not Casper the Ghost. But what we're looking at people have spent 7 digits to buy homes in there. Were they told in advance that there was going to be a development there? Were they advised by the realtor? Were they advised by the attorney that did the title searches? I've practiced law for a long time. I did a lot of real estate work. I was a realtor. I never hesitated to give people advice on what's going on in your neighborhood. But was that done? I don't know. But it's not an issue, but it's a concern that this small quadrant of land is so controversial. One of the other things that has come up in this discussion today, and I've heard it in many other towns, I don't just travel in one town, I travel all over the place. But the concept by which, when you have multiple issues going on, how do you present them? How do you make decisions? I'm impressed by all of you, not by the volume of your voices, which I encourage you to speak to the last person in the back of the room. But more importantly, all of you were you weren't problematic, you weren't deliberate, you got into the issues, and that's a hard thing to do. But you did that, and I hope that you continue to do it, because if ever there was an opportunity to kill a project, this is it. There are other situations where not the affordable housing is a horrible phrase, because what happens with the what's the lower phrase? It's I forget it. It's what it's not coming to mind at the moment. But affordable housing is the label on all these regulations. It's the label on what the state has thrown upon us. It's the label on 40B and what that does. It's the label on the consequences of that. But we're not talking about what the land is. Several people have gotten up, and Andrew Gottlieb came up about an hour and a half ago, and he made the comment, you're not looking at the right issue. And the issue really is find the land that is going to meet your needs. If you need to build 300 units, build it. What they tried in Hyannis at the West End Rotary Golf Course was to take 40 acres and turn it into a 310-unit complex. It's been killed. It took a lot of work for that to happen, but it did. It died. So the project is for you, as you are the equivalent of the town council, in Barnstable and elsewhere. But use your constituents, use your perceptions, use your authority, use your credentials to say, we're going to do the right thing. We're not going to do what we think we have to do.
Right.
And that's a challenge for you. But in this regard, this study was, if ever the wheel went fast, it went fast. It reminds me of the saying that we all know, don't let the tail wag the dog. In this case, however, somebody put an elephant's trunk on that dog. A lot of different. So this study had nothing about lights, nothing about widening the road or turn, nothing about sidewalks, nothing about dealing with the through traffic, nothing about critical intersection speeding issues. If anything, find a way to improve that whole road complex. Let that be your first thing, and then perhaps a minor development could go in there with minimal impact, but help the people that want to promote the housing growth, and it's critical all over the Cape. Help them find the right land, and if not, say, we can't do it. So,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Evan.
I will close this. The understanding that I'm sure you're eager not to make a decision this evening, but there's a few things I'd like to articulate in closing. I would not be suggesting the purpose of this study was conducted with the firm understanding that the existing transportation network in this area, generally between 151 and Old Barnstable Road, and Lowell Road and Great Neck Road North, and Old Barnstable Road and Great Neck Road North, is insufficient in present conditions. That is articulated in the study, and a series of recommendations are articulated in the study to improve the existing network. I'm not suggesting to build this project without making the improvements that are recommended by Vanass and Associates. That would be antithetical to good planning practice. But what I am saying is that there are a series of relatively easily implemented solutions to the existing problems with identified funding solutions that are feasible now. And relative to child safety, I would posit that it is far more detrimental to child safety to be housing insecure or homeless. So it is critical you consider this site in that lens. We just presented to you a housing production plan articulating the needs of this community. And so it is critical that we continue to evaluate the site for its potential. And further, I heard the gentleman recognize that the Quashnet Valley condominiums is overflowed or filled with numerous people in each unit beyond the 4 that are allowed per unit. That's because there's no housing. It is not affordable, it is not available. So you need to create it. And so I am not suggesting to build this project without making the improvements articulated in this traffic study. But the traffic study was prepared in accordance with best practice by a qualified consultant, transportation engineer, with well-articulated and implementable solutions to the articulated issues. So we should consider them. Thank you.
One last point, Chair. The point, Evan, you just said, on page 5 of Jeff's report, he cites that in 2009, which is 15 years ago, a safety study was done at the intersection of Great Neck Road and Old Barnstable Road, Great Neck Road and Lowell, outlining recommended improvements to improve safety, 2009. None of those recommendations have been implemented. So we can articulate all these safety improvements and all this and that. I hear you, but we haven't shown it in the past. So we read the recommendations and they're all viable, for sure, but they have to be implemented too.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion tonight, for sure. We will. Thank you for listening. Oh, we.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah. You're welcome. If you want to take a copy.
Is there any final questions for the consultant?
I don't have any. Does any of the board have any questions for the consultant?
I don't at this point.
No.
I don't.
Okay.
I do not.
No, we do not.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
All
Madam
done.
Chair. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. Wow. Evan gave us too much tonight. You gave us too much tonight.
Well, this is my last go. This is my swan song, Carol.
Okay.
Only 6 years effort.
Adjourn the meeting to the, oh, I'm sorry. We have one more thing. I'm sorry. Two more things. The
If, Madam Chair, the hazard mitigation plan that you have before you for a resolution, if you feel you don't have adequate time, we have a
We'll take
year
it.
to get that accomplished.
Table.
I would like to do it at your next
We'll
meeting
ta-
if you have time.
We'll table it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we have an offer to purchase 12 Cypress Circle. So this can be a quick one.
I think this can be quick. I've been working on this since the first 6 months I started with you in 2019.
Okay.
Back then, a property owner approached me because her property was subject to a restrictive covenant, a subdivision in Fox Hill. She was not in a good position to have the covenant released by constructing the roadway. I suggested to her at that time that it would make a reasonable opportunity for affordable housing. She agreed and submitted an application to the CPC for that purpose. We submitted an article for town meeting. Town meeting authorized the acquisition.
Right.
When we went to transfer the title, it had turned out that she had inherited the property from her sister and the title wasn't clean. She had spent a number of years cleaning the title, going through probate, and that has been successfully accomplished. The property owner has been working, or property owner's council has been in touch with our council and presented a offer to purchase. Tonight, you just need to, if you're still willing, to accept the deed to 12 Cypress Circle for the purposes of developing affordable housing. At the time of the original CPC application, we submitted a request for letters of interest from local developers, and we received 2. I would anticipate those developers' interests remain, and so if you should feel so inclined as to accept the deed tonight, we would be in a good position to get it out for a developer in relatively short order.
And this is 1.2 acres.
This is a 1.2 acre site, yes.
Okay.
12 bedrooms at most.
And at the cost of $107,000?
Correct.
So you'd be, Madam Chair, we'd be looking for a motion
A
to...
motion.
You've already authorized the funds.
We've already
You just need to accept the deed.
accepted the deed.
And this in no way affects the operation of the Rod and Gun Club?
There's actually some encroachment by the Rod and Gun Club on this property that would likely need to be evaluated. I think it's just some tree clearing by the Rod and Gun Club. But no, this would be separate and independent of the Rod and Gun Club, but the site plan would want to be considerate of their parking facilities. Yes, Richard?
How many units would you be putting on this one house or multiples?
It depends on the permitting pathway. It would, if it's habitat, they're doing multiple houses on the lot, 2 or 3, more than likely. Hack or some other developer might be interested in like an apartment type building. It really depends ultimately on the developer and their business model and the nature of our RFP. And so it could look any number of ways. It is in a zone 2. It is bound by flow neutral, so it's 1 bedroom per 10,000 on this site. And so I think it's a 10 to 12 bedroom site. I think it gets 12 with an IA. So at, a couple 3-bedroom houses, 2 3s and a 2. It depends how it breaks down.
50,000 square foot lot?
It might be. I think it may be more than that, Richard.
Yeah, 1.2 acres.
Yeah, well, an acre is 43,000, so.
I think the site is bigger than that.
Okay, do I have a motion? Do you want to?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the deed of 12 Cypress Circle.
Do I have a second?
Second that motion.
Okay, Tom?
We can still have discussion if.
Yep. Do I have?
No, good.
Okay.
Yeah, unless.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Richard?
Yes.
Yes. Alan?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David? And
Yes.
myself is a yes. Okay, so we will adjourn the joint meeting with the Affordable Housing. We just did.
I think we should commend Evan for sticking
Yes.
with this.
Yes.
He's done single-handedly followed this job,
Yes, he
this
did.
project through until it got ironed out.
Yes, he
And
did.
I think he's going to make a great project.
And on that note, is this your last meeting?
Yes, and before we actually should, before we adjourn, we should do one more. Board and committees and commissions.
You've got
and-
public comment, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
I think somebody.
I was going to do that next. I was just going to do this, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
this is a resignation from Affordable Housing Committee. Discussion and approval of the following resignation. Affordable Housing Committee, member at large, term expires June 30th, 2024, Alan Nisbet. And we thank you for your dedication that you've done
I was
for
afraid you're going
affordable
to change your
housing.
mind.
So I need a
Normally
motion.
we'd be like clapping.
Yeah,
and all
I
that,
need
but
a
no,
motion
you're
and a
not- We're not
second.
going to be clapping in this case.
I need a motion and a
You're
second.
tired out.
You're going to get a thank you.
Need a motion and a
I
second.
appreciate it. Thank you. It's
So
been a
moved.
pleasure.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
With regret.
With regret, yes. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now
Now what are you gonna do?
we have public comment. Some
Well,
people have
my
already
wife is
checked
gonna
out.
Answer that question for me.
There you go. Me.
In your name?
Chair and select members, my name's Tim Dorsey from 86 Blue Castle Drive.
Okay.
Some 9 years ago, a special permit was issued to put a cluster development in the middle of Blue Castle Drive with a new access road called Carriage Road that connects from Blue Castle to DeGrasse. To build 14 houses. That was 9 years ago. The special permit ran out. They extended it for another year, which I thought was irregular. And that expired some years ago also. Now, 11 of the 14 houses have been built. There's 3 vacant lots that the builder uses as his own personal contractor yard. All right, one yard has 2 bobcats, an excavator, a very large trailer, a dump truck, all types of construction material, plants. Plants, believe it or not, he had a couple of hundred plants on conservation land that after a year of complaining to the conservation, they finally got the plants off the conservation land and everything. But that's not my point. My point is, it's now Mr. Leah tells me that the special permit will go on indefinitely until all the houses are built. I think that's highly irregular and not correct. I've lived in Mashpee for over 40 years. I've never seen a commercial contractor yard in a residential neighborhood. I've been to the planning board meeting numerous times. They send me to the building department. The building department says he's backing the builder. He can keep his stuff there and everything else. I think it's crazy. He's got one lot with all this equipment on it, and then 2 lots with a giant pile of construction material. As of late, he put 100 yards of mulch in Carriage Road, and he more than half of it he carted off to places unknown to me, but he uses the contractor yard, I'll call it, to do, he hasn't built any houses in years there. And he has a contractor yard in Mashpee in a residential neighborhood, which I think is, it's completely not correct. So I've been to every meeting at the planning board. They send me to the building department. I talk to the town manager's office. They say they can't go against the building commissioner. So I'm asking for your help as to what to do. It's just...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's it?
We don't respond to public comment.
Oh, you don't? Okay, so...
But you were heard.
But you were heard.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay. Sue Daigle. Hi.
Hello, Colton Atkinson, 112 Algonquin. 2 topics, but I promise I'll be as brief as I can. Roadway safety being the first one, and I'm going to say the word Old Barnstable, but it's about Route 151 from Old Barnstable to the town line. It doesn't meet the Mass DOT's design standards with respect to its multimodal infrastructure. That would require a shared use path because it's above the speed limit of 40 miles per hour and the average daily vehicle threshold. But while we can't change the traffic overnight and we can't build infrastructure immediately, we can adjust the speed limit. As it stands, we're giving an exemption to exceed the statutory speed limit of 40 miles per hour. And we do not have the infrastructure required for by Mass DOT. I ask that you direct the DPW director to request that until Phase 2 construction, which is planned and funded, completes the shared use path along the roadway, Mass DOT reduce the speed limit to 35 miles per hour to be more in compliance with their own guidelines, or at the very least remove the special speed limit exemption and bring it back to 40 miles per hour. These measures would cost motorists 19 to 33 seconds, but they would reduce the risk of fatality by 73%. I've given you written remarks on this you can reference as well, but now I'll move on to the next topic. So since your last regularly scheduled meeting, I think June 5th, June 7th, one of those two, there's been racist graffiti sprayed throughout the town and an email calling for the segregation of our public schooling system. To say that I am disappointed that this topic did not merit inclusion on the agenda for discussion tonight would be an understatement. The contents of the email sent to town staff should concern all of us. Without further context, the quote given in the Cape News that "you know what you have to do, fix it or we will," can only be read as a threat to the physical safety of the African American students. It warrants both disavowal and a discussion of actions to be taken to reassure parents that their children are safe at our schools. I understand it was discussed at the Inclusion and Diversity Committee, and I appreciate their work, but this deserves the time of the leaders of our town, not to be delegated to a committee without policy-making authority at a meeting that was not aired on Mashpee TV, did not have the meeting posted on the online town calendar, or agenda posted on their site page, and is not selectable from the drop-down options of the town's websites, boards, and committees. My father always told me that everything you do conveys something about you. When I provide you comments tonight about roadway safety, you likely inferred that I am a multimodal user of Route 151. When I didn't make public comments about the road conversion earlier, you probably inferred that it wasn't that important to me. So now consider, what message is our town conveying about the importance of inclusion to us?
Thank you. Larry Moran? No? Donna Hill? Rick Davis? And you are?
My name is Steve Bjorkland. I'm actually not a resident in town yet, but I'm a developer that's looking to develop down here. And I'm not going to speak ill about anything at all, but listening to the meeting earlier this evening on all the traffic concerns, I heard the neighbors mention that the condominium complex that's already down there has maybe 100 units in it, and they're all overflowing with cars. Maybe if they made the condominium association get rid of all the cars and the extra people in there, there'd be no negative impact on the traffic. So
Thank you.
You guys did a great job tonight.
Thank you. Chris Ball? You better be quick. 3 minutes.
You only get the balance of 3 minutes.
I know.
I'm Chris Ball, 83 Quiniquisette Ave. I'm not here as Mashpee TV. I'm here as a resident of Mashpee. I don't speak for Mashpee TV tonight in any way, shape, or form. I'm not only a resident, but I'm a citizen of the United States of America. I believe in our Constitution, all its amendments, and I am appalled at this sign down the street.
Good, thank you, Chris.
I understand that it's protected, but I don't know why there's not an outcry. Social media, etc. Gentleman earlier spoke about the inclusion and diversity. We hear about the letters that have been written, the graffiti. That person is wrong. It's not right. It's not a matter of what party you're in, who the president is. It's the respect of the office and our country. I urge all citizens to get on social media, write the enterprise, but we should all be offended by this. In a day of age, when you're offended by everything right down to pancake syrup, and I gotta go by this sign, that person should be ashamed. It's just wrong. I won't go on anymore. It's been a long night for all of you, but thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so liaison reports. No one wants to go forward. Water quality update, town manager update. We go home.
The Mashpee online auction is up and running. Offices will be closed on the 4th of July. And I was planning on making a quick comment relative to the sign. Met with new council today. It was a great meeting.
Oh, good.
And any enforcement action that can be taken relative to the sign bylaw, not to be confused with the content,
Right.
the town will be taking.
Good.
And that's it.
Thank you.
If I could ask that all of you return your hazardous mitigation, so I
Yes.
don't have to reprint.
We won't have
those.
to take them home.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
One
moved.
second.
Sure.
Oh,
you gotta
God
return-
bless
So,
you.
not, Evan, I just, while we're still, we haven't. continued to
Evan,
vote.
this was your last meeting.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you,
You've been
Evan.
amazing to Mashpee. And don't go far.
It's,
Thank you, Evan.
you have to adjourn the Affordable Housing Trust first.
We did that a long time ago.